Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1508 of the War News stream. And tonight we have groundbreaking news literally happening just 10 minutes ago. Iran has rejected all U.S. peace talks as attacks appear to be imminent. So U.S. forces are going to pretty much double it and give it to the next Ayatollah. We've also seen that China is preparing to send air defense to Iran amid strong U.S. threats toward China this time. And also, Iran targeted a U.S. destroyer today with a drone near Hormuz. And we have a lot of news today and breaking news as we speak. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have gotten news just minutes before we went live on air that the Vice President of the United States of America, who was the head of the diplomatic negotiating team that we sent to Islamabad, has made an official announcement and speech stating that after 16 hours of negotiation efforts with the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran has not ceded any U.S. demands and has in fact refused to accept any demands made by the United States of America and have demanded maximalist terms, meaning that at this moment, the peace talks have completely collapsed. The Vice President and his delegation will be flying back to the United States of America, and the war has restarted effective immediately. We have also seen that the Strait of Hormuz has still remained closed today, and it also appears that the Iranians may have conducted some sort of a possible armed attack against one of our Arleigh-Burke-class guided missile destroyers, which attempted to enter the area of the Strait of Hormuz today. And as two Arleigh-Burkes attempted to approach the area of the Strait, and the IRGC battery commanders along the coastline immediately threatened that if those vessels continued to steam any further into the Hormuz, they would be subjected to significant fire and volleys by Iranian coastal batteries that would attempt to hit and destroy the vessels. Due to this, according to our information, the Arleigh-Burkes turned around, and there is a possible bit of news out there that they may have also come under one attack from one drone that was launched from the coast, although we're still trying to make sure to verify that claim at this moment. Still, no tankers have left the strait, and the area is entirely idle from what we can tell, and we've also been able to hear a significant amount of statements from the President of the United States, including those that the peace deal will go great, then the statement that China will have big problems if they're getting weapons to Iran, which we'll get to here in a minute, and then also, although the peace deal will go great, and there's no question about that. Making a deal doesn't really matter because we've already won the war, and we're just talking to him because, we like to talk. We've also been able to hear that the People's Republic of China is apparently preparing to give the Islamic Republic of Iran, through arms shipments by sea and air, some form of man-portable air defense systems that may be more advanced than current variants that have already been used to attempt attacks on the A-10 Warthog, which was shot down several days ago, and also the F-35, which took a very near hit from a Majid air defense system near to the area of Tehran. Now we're starting to hear information, at least at this moment, that the Chinese might be willing to provide a manpad that is even more advanced and capable than the ones that are already in the Iranian arsenal, to further try and create a more difficult strategic situation for the United States of America in the ongoing war, since the situation is once again returning to that very sort of environment. We've also seen that the state of Israel was announcing anyways that they were going to be largely continuing the war no matter what, regardless of what was negotiated today in Islamabad. Rocket alerts were seen within northern Israel, and Israeli airstrikes had continued around the city of Tyre, and there was significant air activity around the area of central and southern Lebanon over the course of the past 24 hours. Further than that, we have also been able to hear that inside of Uganda, for a little bit of comical news, we have been able to hear that Uganda has now demanded $1 billion from Turkey and their hottest chick to be sent down to Uganda to marry the chief of the military of the Ugandan Armed Forces. We've now been able to hear that the chief of the Ugandan Armed Forces has also stated that Ugandans shouldn't travel to Turkey because Turkey is not willing to provide the $1 billion in cash for the dowry payment for the finest and hottest looking Turkish woman to be sent down to Uganda effective immediately. It appears that the return of Idi Amin is assured at this moment. We have also been able to give further developments that a large amount of oil tankers are making their way on down into the area of the Gulf Coast to be able to start sipping from the U.S. oil reserves and to start seeing that those are shipped out to Europe. It does appear that at this moment this will start to lead to rising oil and gas prices here in the United States of America, as the availability of supply will decrease. And as a result of that, we will most likely see that as the days and weeks continue to pass, the consumer difficulties in terms of price spending and price indexes will start to become more challenging for the U.S. citizenry. We've also been able to hear of further developments inside the war in Ukraine, as Ukrainian armed forces did inflict significant casualties onto the Russian Federation's armed forces today and have stopped any advances, even in the midst of what was supposed to be an Easter ceasefire, which the Russians violated literally within minutes of the ceasefire going into effect, although the Russians were the ones to ask the Ukrainians for that ceasefire and then went out of their way to break it. But with that in mind, we're about to be getting on into our largest stories of the day, starting with our largest news first, and then moving our way on down to the smaller pieces of news throughout the night. But before we do, we actually have breaking news that's coming out at this moment. And Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so we have some more details coming out right now this very minute about why the peace talks fell apart inside of Pakistan between U.S. and Iranian officials. And once again, I want to reiterate, right now, the news just broke. The vice president made a very short 3-minute and 50-second speech, and we'll show some of that here in just a minute here on the air. But right now, we're hearing that apparently the Iranians were unwilling to give up their alleged right to uranium enrichment, which right now is one of the main issues in the peace talks. The Iranians were not willing to agree to that, but there is one big notable mention that was not talked about whatsoever during the speech, and it was not addressed. According to some reporters that were in the room, apparently the Strait of Hormuz was not mentioned during these announcements of a no-deal situation. So we don't know what's up with the Strait of Hormuz. I would imagine if the Iranians are still being maximalist, then they're probably keeping the Strait of Hormuz closed, and that appears to be the likely case. But also, they are not willing to give up their uranium enrichment either, from the sounds of it. So that's a pretty big deal as well. So it sounds like pretty much no progress whatsoever was made in these talks.
It does appear that at the moment, we're also hearing that apparently the Iranian state-affiliated media Tasnim news agency says Iran pushed for a common framework in talks, but claims that the U.S. was conducting a maximalist approach, blocking progress. Now, if we were to take these two claims right now and fuse them together, this means that our analysis was dead on the nail accurate last night when we stated that the United States was going to be attempting to make a maximalist approach on their end, if we're taking the Iranian words at face value, and then the Iranians were apparently operating from a maximalist approach on their end, where they were not willing to concede any of the U.S.'s demands or even attempt to meet us in the middle in some form of a compromise. So this once again showed us that the diplomatic talks that were going to be conducted today and have failed today were going to fail, as our analysis did predict largely obviously last night before the talks had even commenced. We did get to hear, moving us on into the news immediately in our largest story of the day, the statements that just came out moments ago from the Vice President of the United States inside of Islamabad in Pakistan, where the statement was made that there was no deal. I'm actually going to be playing the audio here in its raw form and not talking over it, so y'all can hear the official statements of the U.S. head negotiator, the Vice President of the United States, after the talks had concluded. And here is that statement.
Help us and the Iranians bridge the gap and get to a deal. We have been at it now for 21 hours, and we've had a number of substantive discussions with the Iranians. That's the good news. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America.
And that was the end of that statement. We also have an additional clip here also showing further statements by the vice president right here, including this longer 52-second clip, which we'll let y'all hear right now to give y'all a little bit of further information about the exact statements that were made by the vice president. But before we actually get to that, we have to break once more, folks, because we actually have more breaking news coming out at this moment. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so we have two more pieces of breaking news coming out about these talks. Right now, we're hearing that the Iranian state media is starting to make some pretty wild statements on their state networks right now. They're saying that Iran tried to steer talks toward a common framework, but they call the U.S. naturally greedy, and they say that prevented all the progress. They also say as well that Iran refused to discuss the Strait of Hormuz whatsoever, and they also refused to discuss removal of nuclear materials during these talks, which seems to line up with the fact that we're hearing other reports from other sources saying that Iran was not willing to reduce or stop enriching uranium. That does appear to match up with that. So they're calling the U.S. naturally greedy. That's the statements right now on Iranian state media, and it sounds like they're going in hard right now on the U.S. negotiators, which are about to be leaving the region in just a little short while here. But it sounds like it's pretty much pointless. I think our analysis was pretty much on the point.
It also appears, just to make sure that we reiterate this one more time, that the Iranians completely refused in the peace talks to speak at all about the Strait of Hormuz, meaning that they weren't even willing to consider that a point of negotiation, and they were going into the negotiations with the concept that they are assuming de facto that they are in control of the Strait of Hormuz, and that is such an obvious idea that they're not even willing to discuss it with the United States of America at all, meaning that there was no chance in hell, even in this round of talks, even if there was progress, in seeing that the Iranians would open the Strait of Hormuz, which is largely the most important real-time situation that we're dealing with at this moment right now. Of course, the development of nuclear weapons, the sponsoring of terrorist groups, and the development of ICBMs is incredibly dangerous and pertinent to see resolved for U.S. national strategy purposes and also for U.S. homeland security. But nevertheless, our most direct issue right now is the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. And the Iranians are playing such a hardball right now because we haven't challenged their control of the Strait of Hormuz that they weren't even willing to speak about whether or not they would open the Strait of Hormuz, showing that any attempts at statements prior by the Iranians to state that that might change was nothing more than a diplomatic feint on their end to possibly see if they could get further support internationally from the People's Republic of China. We actually have further breaking news also coming out as well at this moment.
Okay, so we're also getting some more statements. The Iranian state networks right now are going off the hinges right now, and they are putting out all kinds of propaganda about these talks. So right now, another Iranian state network is claiming that Iran has no plans whatsoever for another round of talks, and it is over. And also the U.S. said it was over as well. So both sides have basically thrown in the towel. It's pretty much done with at this point. So war is imminent. Obviously, at this point, war is imminent once again. We do know that in about 24 to 48 hours, parts of the 82nd Airborne of the U.S. Army will be arriving in theater. We also know as well that there's other ground forces already stationed and also staged near Iran as well. So if there's going to be something escalating, it's going to be happening here pretty quick. So right now, the Iranians are probably gearing up for another round, and the U.S. is obviously, they've been gearing up for over weeks at this point. So it's about to go off.
And it does appear that it is about to be going off once again, as the Iranians and the United States have both made it clear that this was their only attempt at talks, and now it appears that the gloves are off once again, and the fighting is going to resume quite quickly. As a matter of fact, technically, folks, because the talks have collapsed, the war is on again right now. It's just that nobody's really started shooting at each other, because this information only just came out moments ago. We might expect within the hour, we might start to see attacks conducted by the Islamic Republic of Iran once again on a large variety of countries throughout the region, but it's not going to be happening here within the next few minutes. That we can tell y'all. But Getting us on out of that statement, I do want to bring us back to the longer statement that was made by the Vice President of the United States after it became incredibly and exorbitantly clear that the peace talks had failed, and the Vice President was able to witness that with his own eyes because he was the head negotiator in the room. So here is the longer statement by the Vice President of the United States about the conclusion of the failed talks.
What have they rejected here? Can you help us understand it a little bit?
So, just to paraphrase this, by the way, before we hear the Vice President, the reporter just asked, what were the Iranians not willing to concede on? Could y'all give us a little bit of details, basically about the difficulties that were had that led to the talks collapsing? And now the Vice President's about to respond to that question.
Well, I won't go into all the details because I don't want to negotiate in public after we negotiated for 21 hours in private. But the simple fact is that we need to see an affirmative commitment that they will not seek a nuclear weapon, and they will not seek the tools that would enable them to quickly achieve a nuclear weapon. That is the core goal of the President of the United States, and that's what we've tried to achieve through these negotiations. Again, their nuclear program, such as it is, the enrichment facilities that they had before, they've been destroyed. But the simple question is, do we see a fundamental commitment of will for the Iranians not to develop a nuclear weapon, not just now, not just 2 years from now, but for the long term? We haven't seen that yet. We hope that we will.
And that was also the additional statement. So it appears that the Iranians were not willing to concede on nuclear enrichment, and we also understand that they did not speak about the Strait of Hormuz whatsoever in the talks, and appeared to have assumed, leading into the talks, that they were going to have de facto control of the Hormuz indefinitely, to the point that it wasn't even worth discussing the matter. Outside of that, we did get a lot of information and news on the developments that had happened over the course of the day that led to the statements that just came out minutes ago that the talks were an abysmal failure and had achieved absolutely nothing in terms of either ending the conflict or seeing that the blockade of the Hormuz or any other major U.S. strategic imperatives had been largely achieved, or at least won to some extent, or compromised on at a minimum. And it does appear that a lot of people are currently talking about, before we get into all of the details of what happened over the course of the day, what's going to be next, considering that it's obviously clear now that, much like our analysis was predicting on the channel last night, the Islamic Republic of Iran is playing hardball because they understand that their strategic position is somewhat favorable if they're able to control the Strait of Hormuz indefinitely, and the United States is playing hardball, as we believe, due to our larger strikes inside the Islamic Republic of Iran against military targets that do not pertain to the Strait, and also the Iranian government, that we've been able to cause enough material and physical damage and personnel damage to be able to see that we might be able to get on a good negotiating position to make the Iranians concede to our demands. Although that did not happen in the talks today, much to the dismay, I would assume, of the U.S. government and its officials who were in charge of creating that sort of a foreign policy and negotiating strategy. Right now, a lot of people are talking about what's going to be next on the heels of this major development that just happened moments ago. And before we get to that, we, crazily enough, have even more breaking news coming out right now. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so right now we just got word that Vice President Vance has just gone wheels up on Air Force Two. He is currently left. It looks like Air Force Two is taken off. It'll be taking off here in probably about 30 seconds to about a minute. And he just waved from the top of the staircase while boarding the VIP transport aircraft. So they're about to be leaving Pakistan. They're going to be leaving Pakistan. They're going to be heading out, I would assume, taking the same route they took in, probably all the way around Afghanistan. They obviously will not go through Afghanistan because obviously there's an active war between Pakistan and Afghanistan right now. We are seeing as well that apparently, according to reports here from Pakistani officials, that the talks, which lasted about 20 plus hours, they started off initially positive, but then afterwards, the Pakistanis describe mood swings by both sides, from the Iranians and the U.S. So from the sounds of it, they both showed up pretty giddy about making a deal. And then, once the reality of the substance started hitting the table, things started going sideways, because the Iranians probably wouldn't discuss the Strait of Hormuz. They wouldn't discuss the uranium enrichment issue. They wouldn't discuss anything of note. So they went sideways. So basically, after the initial couple of hours, it went sideways the rest of the time. So it's pretty much a waste. But that is the breaking news.
And that is the current development that we have been able to hear at the moment. But getting us on in that poll, Matthew, what are people thinking about what's next for the United States in this on the heels of this news that just came out that the talks were a complete failure? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so now that we have heard officially that the peace proposals are over and both sides are done talking, and once the talking stops, usually that's when the shooting starts again. The countries, Iran and the United States, will likely start a shooting war at each other. That's probably what's going to start happening. So now that we're seeing that, what do you think is next? And it looks like 49% said U.S. airstrikes larger than ever are likely imminent at this point, and 40% said a U.S. invasion of Iran territory is probably coming next. And 4% said probably a temporary pause in the fighting, at least for the moment of time being, that is. And I would say imminently, airstrikes is the very obvious answer. We really can't comment on an invasion. We simply don't know what the plans are about that. They've been preparing for one for weeks, so it's certainly possible, but we really can't speculate whether or not it's imminent or not. It's sort of up to y'all to decide that. So, but I would say definitely, though, airstrikes are going to resume. I'd imagine probably Tehran's going to get hammered, probably harder than ever now that the U.S. has had a chance to replenish their missile supplies. And we're also going to see probably Iran start launching attacks in the Gulf states, and it could escalate to the point that infrastructure is the next target. That could be it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I believe that we're probably going to be seeing fairly large U.S. air operations over the Islamic Republic of Iran at a definite guaranteed minimum. We may see that there are ground invasions that are conducted inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran, but these will most likely be taking a fairly limited form and a fairly limited scope, given the fact that the available ground forces that will be available for operations will be one brigade combat team of the 82nd Airborne Division, the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit on board the USS Tripoli ARG, and also the 11th Marine Expeditionary Group on board the USS Boxer and its amphibious rated group, which is still underway at this moment and it has not arrived within the area and is expected to arrive somewhere within the next 7 days. We may see that ground invasions are definitely not going to be happening here within the next few days. They might happen within the next few weeks if they happen at all. But one thing that we can be guaranteed at a minimum is that there will be more and continued significant air operations over the Islamic Republic of Iran. But the major question here is, folks, is not whether or not we're going to be bombing Iran, but how are we going to be bombing Iran as far as the U.S. Armed Forces is concerned. If we see that the airstrike campaigns continue as they were last time, we would be able to assume that at this point the United States will not be able to achieve any significant strategic success on the broader scale of the conflict, and we'll most likely see that the stranglehold that the Iranians have on the Strait of Hormuz will start to bleed the international oil markets dry, and we'll also start to see a skyrocketing price of oil and also a shortage of oil if that blockade continues. If the United States changes its airstrike operations and begins to prioritize strategic targets that are physically obstructing access and passage of the international waterways in the Strait of Hormuz, we may see that the United States is able to strategically turn the situation around and largely remove Iran's only negotiating chip that they have at the moment, which is their direct control of the Strait of Hormuz and their continued significant efforts at economic damage here in the United States and the West by that action. I would hope that when we see these airstrike campaigns begin again, that we see that most, if not all of them, will be focalized around the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' forces near to the Strait of Hormuz and around the area of the Strait of Hormuz and the entirety of the country that may be able to be used to support the ongoing Iranian blockade within that area. If we see that airstrikes once again start to hit major cities like Tehran and Isfahan with largely no larger strategic picture rather than causing damage and just damage for the sake of it, we will be able to assume that at this point, the strategic outlook is probably going to be getting worse for some time in the future, much like it was over the past 5 weeks, as we saw little to no action to clear the Strait of Hormuz during that period of time. We are still waiting for a presidential comment. I know that a lot of people are asking about that. I just saw Matthew address that as well in the chat. We haven't been able to hear one yet, but I'm sure the Truth Social is about to be truthin' and socialin' quite a lot here in a minute, so we'll probably be getting some statements here soon from the President of the United States. Outside of that, however, we do have to give you all a little bit of a glimpse of how the 21 hours of negotiations went today, to give you all a little bit of an idea of how everything transpired before we were able to hear this major breaking news that just came out a moment ago. According to the first news that we got today, we were able to see that the aircraft of the Vice President, Air Force 2, did land in Islamabad and appeared to have been escorted by Pakistani JF-17s, which we can see flying over the airfield there as the 757s landed below. We also were able to additionally hear that after the aircraft landed and the U.S. Vice President shook hands with the Iranian delegation, they sat down and immediately got to work, kind of achieving a little bit of Iran's demands, funnily enough. Apparently, at least earlier in the day, according to Reuters, the U.S. had agreed to release Iranian frozen assets held in Qatar and other foreign banks. So it appears that immediately we were trying to sweeten the deal for them a little bit, at least if this report is accurate, by giving them those pallets of cash, in a sense, to be able to see if that would get them to, loosen their lips a little bit and agree to a little bit more. We then were able to
also, Also, real quick on that one right there, officially the U.S. denied that report. They say that report is not true, according to what I've heard so far. And from the sounds of it, it's likely the case that the U.S. did not agree to relinquish those assets, because now that the talks went sideways, and also the reports from the eyewitnesses are that after the first hour or two of the talks, it already started going sideways. So it's questionable whether or not they actually did that, and if they did, they might just reverse it now that the talks went sideways, possibly. So I kind of have some doubts about that.
I was actually going to get to that in the roundabout conclusion at the end. I was going to be like, they probably rescinded this one, because I have a feeling that this was probably a sweetening offer. Like, it wasn't a guarantee. It was probably like, if you agree to these things, we'll probably do that. And that might have been one of the first things that was said, just as kind of like the truth of it, folks. At a car dealership, when a salesperson says, what will it take to get you in this car? Would taking a little bit off the sticker price get you in it? Basically, this was kind of the equivalent of that, I would assume. And currently the U.S. government is denying that the claim was made, but I would say, folks, that there is probably a likelihood that this offer was at least thrown out there a little bit to try and sweeten the deal, as of course we wanted in a negotiation to try and get the Iranians to agree with us. And usually you got to get the other side some concessions to see that they might start moving down towards the middle into a compromise at least. We then were able to hear that right after that, the first phase of in-person talks ceased after 2 hours. And this was the part where we started to hear that things were largely going south. The sources say both sides were exchanging written texts aimed at confirming that they're on the same page on agreements reached in Islamabad, the first direct talks between Washington and Tehran since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Apparently, the piece of paper that the U.S. delegation got from the Iranians said something along the lines of, we aren't giving up the nukes, we aren't giving up terrorist funding, we aren't giving up ICBMs, we control the Strait of Hormuz, that's not even a point in discussion, and everything's going to go fine for us and y'all are screwed. And then that apparently got the U.S. delegation, I would assume, a little bit flustered, and then they had to give a break for a moment. Then after that break, after the first 2 hours of talks, the discussions began again, and we were able to hear that happened about an hour after the break had started. The talks then continued for some time, and we were already hearing that apparently the Iranians were just outright refusing to talk about the Strait of Hormuz, at least according to New York Times reports, which were made from people who discussed this development with the press that were familiar with the matter. And apparently the Iranians considered that a sticking point, and the U.S. was demanding an immediate opening, and the Iranians, from what we would understand at this point, we're largely claiming that it's theirs and they're keeping it, and they're not going to be relinquishing that at all. We then also were able to hear that significant disagreements started to form on all fronts between the Iranian and U.S. delegations in the negotiations. They then extended the talks even further. At this point, the talks had been going on for about, I think it was like 14 hours. And then we were finally able to hear that apparently the talks had gone on for a whopping 16 hours and counting. Then on the 21st hour, which was where we were just at when the vice president came out, the vice president then came out 21 hours later and then stated that there had been no deal made and the Iranians basically agreed to nothing. And now the vice president's back on the aircraft, the 757, and they're now flying back to the United States at this moment right now. We also understand in the middle of the talks, by the way, to add to the bit of the humor in this, that apparently 5 more Iranian planes landed in Islamabad, and they just started to bring out Joe, Billy, and Jimmy from the woodshed in Iran to also come in and start being a part of the talks as well. So I'm guessing at some point the room had like 5 U.S. delegates in it and like 50 Iranian ones, because the Iranians just kept flying planes in during the middle of the talks the entire time, just bringing in more delegates. God knows for what. I mean, I don't know why they need more of them for. I mean, the original delegation was sent with the marching orders of what was acceptable and what wasn't acceptable, but apparently they had to send a whole 5 other plane loads of Iranian delegates in the midst of the talks that were ongoing throughout the whole course of the day. So it does appear that from all accounts that we can see, it doesn't look like these talks went well at all, especially from all of the developments that we were getting throughout the day. And now that we have the vice president's official statement to work off of, it appears that a lot of these preliminary reports were in fact accurate and were giving a very clear picture and an idea and an image of how the talks were actually going, which was quite badly. We also have been able to hear that down in the Strait of Hormuz, at the exact same time the talks were going on in the middle of the day today, things were getting incredibly heated near to this area. Reports came out earlier this morning that 2 U.S. Navy destroyers, the USS Frank E. Peterson, which is a fairly new Arleigh Burke destroyer, or an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, and the USS Michael Murphy, transited to the Strait of Hormuz and were starting to set the conditions for clearing mines and to establish a safe pathway, with additional U.S. forces, including underwater drones, supposedly joining in the coming days, according to CENTCOM's area of responsibility. They started to make it pretty far towards the strait, and from what we know, they made it, if we're looking at the lateral side of things here, north of Khor Fakkan, and they were getting incredibly close to physically entering the Strait of Hormuz, and then the word came out that apparently the IRGC openly started to threaten the U.S. warships with attack within 30 minutes if it entered the physical parameters of the Strait of Hormuz. Not long after that, we then got a report that stated that the Arleigh Burkes had actually turned back after Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps threatened them and launched a drone towards the ships. We assumed that that drone was most likely shot down by the Arleigh Burkes, and that's when they turned around and started to bail out of the area, because their orders were most likely that if they came under fire or under threat of fire, they were to turn around and retreat, because if they came under fire, and they largely started a shooting conflict in the Hormuz in the middle of the talks in Islamabad, if the talks were going well, that could completely jeopardize it and then turn them on their head, and then the war would restart whether they were making any progress or not. According to the direct statement that we got from Bloomberg, this was the statement in their article. However, a regional intelligence official said 2 U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class destroyers that attempted to transit the Strait of Hormuz on Saturday were forced to turn back after encountering threats from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which also launched a UAV in the direction of the vessels. We do understand that at no point in time did the Arleigh Burkes physically make it into the Strait of Hormuz or begin demining operations, like many largely armchair analysts were making the statements over the course of the day that everything had gone perfectly and the war was in fact over and we had won. From what we were able to tell, the Arleigh Burkes never made it into Hormuz. They got incredibly close, and then once the drone was launched and we assumed that they shot it down, they then turned around and then proceeded full speed out of the area and back into the Gulf of Oman. A lot of people are currently talking about that story right now, and the Iranians refuting the claim that the U.S. destroyers were able to transit through the Hormuz. And Matthew, what are people saying about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so today the U.S. CENTCOM is claiming that 2 Navy destroyers transited through the Strait of Hormuz today, but of course Iran is refuting the claim and saying that's not true. They did not let the ships through. So what is the truth between the two different narratives? And it looks like 54% said I believe it. It sounds like they likely did transit through the strait, while 23% said I don't believe it. It sounds unlikely, and about 15% said I'm about 50-50 on the claim. So just to go over this, by the way, right now we don't know the concrete truth. We're having to go off of CENTCOM statements, and also we're trying to balance it out with these, probably Iranian lies for the most part. It's probably the truth of it, but we're trying to balance out between those two statements there. So CENTCOM did say in a statement, I just reposted that statement on Twitter for everybody if you want to read along with it here. They said the USS Frank E. Peterson and the USS Michael Murphy, 2 destroyers of course, transited through the Strait of Hormuz and operated in the Arabian Gulf as part of a broader mission to ensure that the strait is fully clear of sea mines previously laid by the IRGC. So, we haven't seen a video of it. There appears to be a picture at the very top of this post right here, I would assume showing one of those destroyers, but it's not clear if that's the, destroyer actually in the Strait of Hormuz. It's not really clear, and we don't have any video showing that either. So we're having to take their word for it, and I'll be honest with you, I'm 50-50 on it. I hate to doubt the Navy and things like that, but I'm actually a little bit 50-50 because, transiting the Strait of Hormuz, like, what does that mean? They went through the strait, or does that mean they went up to it and then turned around? It's like, I'm not really sure what that means, if they're playing word games or if they're being, literal with that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I don't believe that they actually passed through the Strait of Hormuz, to be entirely honest with y'all. These vessels traveling at top speed travel at a speed of about 35 knots, if I'm not mistaken, and that means that it would take them probably about 5 to 7 hours to be able to go through the Strait of Hormuz one way. It would then take them about 10 to 14 hours to go back through the Strait of Hormuz and all the way towards the Gulf of Oman once again. That is a 14-hour round trip, and that's only factoring in the starting point being the physical entrance of the Strait of Hormuz on one end, and then the physical exit of the Strait of Hormuz being on the other, and not the transit that would have to be involved with them getting into the Gulf of Oman, getting to Hormuz, passing through, turning around, and then going all the way back through and then back out. The amount of time physically required to be able to conduct an action like that is so long that I don't believe that that could easily be done where I was like, yeah, we just drove the car down to Walmart and drove it back. I just don't really think that that was entirely possible, at least at the moment. And it does appear that while they were able to make it very close to entering the Strait of Hormuz, I would assume that they largely did turn around, as it wouldn't really make a lot of sense. Also due to the fact, folks, that Arleigh Burke guided missile destroyers have no way to physically detect mines from what we know. And while they do have passive sonar and active sonar on board these vessels, passive sonar and active sonar does not allow you to really be able to pick up or detect mines under the water. That's why there are specialized mine clearing vessels such as minesweepers and the mine, I guess you could say floats, that would be used by the CH-53 Sea Stallions to be able to find those mines and then deactivate them or clear them from the waterways to see that they're safe for passage. And Arleigh Burke passing through is like sending through basically any other ship and kind of just hoping and praying that they don't end up hitting a mine. And that'd be a pretty stupid way of trying to find if there's mines inside of the Strait of Hormuz, to be straight up with you all, is just seeing if we can sink a multi-billion-dollar destroyer by it hitting a mine and then saying through that fact, well, it clearly is still mined, and now we need to go through the demining process. Like I don't really believe that this is as straightforward as a lot of people want to make it, because it doesn't really appear to be that much of the case.
We do have an image here, because I see a lot of people saying check Marine Tracker. We do have an image showing that the USS Michael Murphy was near the Strait of Hormuz. We see that here on one of the Marine Tracker images here. I can't tell exactly which Marine Tracker this is from, but it's from one of these sites that tracks the vessel information. It does appear to be near the Strait of Hormuz, and also we have another one that appears to be from a different marine tracking website. If you go take a look at our second post, that shows it also near the Strait. So it shows it near the Strait. I didn't see an image of it actually going through the strait. That's the part that I'm missing right now. But we do have an image showing that at least. So I mean, you can take that how you will.
I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't really know how to take this one, because we also have to factor in there might be some spoofing involved. And that could lead us to believe that this may have not happened, because from what we know, at least according to just the last claim that was made on this Marine Tracker information here, that Manchosin stated that it entered this morning with AIS transmitters switched off, or at least assumed to be off, and then the transponder only turned on after Iran's warnings. And then the question was whether it sailed through the minefield or whether it sailed through Iranian waters. And clearly it didn't sail through Iranian territorial waters. That'd be violating their sovereignty, and that would largely kick off the war again, even though the negotiations were getting somewhere. So it would have had to sail through the middle of the Hormuz, and then it would have had to sail through what we believe at the moment to be an active minefield, which is pretty dangerous, considering that if the ship runs into one of these mines, there's really no way for that ship to be able to detect it. It doesn't have any demining equipment on board, and it doesn't have a fiberglass or wood hull to not have any magnetism that would attract a magnetic mine to it, so it would most likely get hit and destroyed. So I would have to be honest with y'all, I don't really know what the truth of that would be, but I'm kind of leaning more towards the camp, folks, that I would highly doubt that we went through the international waters of the Hormuz, because that's where we believe the minefield is right now, and that would be putting a multi-billion-dollar destroyer at significant risk of damage or loss by sending it through and not knowing where the mines actually are. I mean, if we could send the destroyer through, folks, like that easily, why the hell would we even need to do demining efforts? Clearly, the international waters are safe at that point. There's apparently no mines of any type if we're that confident to send one through. So, what would be the point of further demining efforts like CENTCOM claims? But anyways, with that, we do have more breaking news coming out at this moment. And Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so right now we are seeing, it appears to be more preparations for a restarting of the attacks on Iran. Right now we're seeing that at least 7 U.S. Air Force C-17 cargo aircraft are currently making their way from Ramstein Air Force Base inside of Germany down to the Middle East. It looks like they're making their way into Israel from the looks of it as we speak. So this has been going on for the last 72 hours at least. Pretty much ever since the talks began, we've been seeing a massive U.S. airlift going all the way from North America to Europe and then down to the Middle East. So it appears to be still ongoing as we speak. So once again, it does appear to be preparations, as we speculated about 72 hours ago, for the war to restart, as we also said before. But Enforcer, what say you?
And that's a fairly interesting development. This is also showing us, folks, that this is most likely further replenishment operations that are underway, and strikes will most likely begin here within the very near future, probably within the next few hours, either with the Iranians starting off the strikes or us starting off the strikes. But someone is bound to begin the shooting phase of the conflict once over, considering that the talks have completely failed, and only further military action and hopefully successful strategic efforts will see that one side is forced to negotiate with the other and make significant concessions, and hopefully the Iranians, not our side. But I also see a lot of people talking at the moment still about the minefield inside the strait, and some people said, well, actually, they conducted the demining earlier. And how? Like, I've seen some people say that in the chat. How in the world would they conduct demining, considering that the war was on up until just about a day ago, and there's been no announcements or efforts that we could tell that the Iranians have detected a mine-clearing vessel within the area, and that just wouldn't really make a lot of sense at all. Like, absolutely none. And the additional thing is that CENTCOM specifically stated, and I want to make sure to go get that statement again right here really quickly, that according to their own words, let's see, they began setting conditions for clearing mines. Now, if we use English and we deduce what common English words mean, strung together in a sequence that forms what's called a sentence, the setting of conditions for clearing mines suggests that the mines that are physically there are still there and they haven't been removed, but we're preparing to remove them. So the mine clearing vessels weren't around earlier in the morning and then these ships just passed through. That would be a flat out lie, and that would just be a complete misrepresentation of the facts. Because in common English words that a reasonable person would take the assumption of, we are setting conditions to clear the mines, not clearing them. So I want to make that incredibly clear. The strait is still mined from what we know, and that's also why I'm saying that it's probably a little unlikely that a destroyer just went and balled right through a minefield, because if you were an infantryman in a similar situation on land and your commander told you, okay, I just want you to go running through that minefield to see how many mines there are, and if you step on one and blow up, then we'll know how many there are, would you do that? And the answer would be no. So that's why I'm kind of doubting that these ships went all the way through the Hormuz and back, because that's basically, just gambling Russian roulette with an entire destroyer with a couple of hundred sailors on board. But anyways, outside of that, we do have further developments that have been coming out of the Strait today. Outside of that, we did get to note that there were hardly any movements through the Strait of Hormuz once again today over the past 24 hours. With these movements right here being the only ones. And from what we could tell, there was a little bit of a slightly larger number of vessels that did transit through the Iranian corridors through the strait, but we really didn't see the full-on opening of the strait like some people in the government have claimed. We also were able to get reports that apparently the Iranians did allow a pair of Chinese supertankers carrying oil for the Chinese energy giant Sinopec to cross through the Strait of Hormuz today, according to Reuters. And an additional Liberian flag tanker also crossed the Strait of Hormuz as well. But from what we understand, all of these vessels are either Chinese or Russian in origin, or they're heading to a Chinese or Russian port, or their former port of business that they're departing from is an Iranian port. So generally, from what we're seeing, the Iranians are only allowing conditional entry and exit of the strait by vessels that are involved with business with the Islamic Republic of Iran, or are involved in business with the People's Republic of China or the Russian Federation, or some other business that lies in between the three groups. So largely making sure that only Axis-affiliated ships can pass in and out of the strait. Every other ship is still effectively being stopped at this moment. We also were able to hear additional statements that the IRGC warned any military vessels attempting to cross the strait will face a decisive response, according to the Iranian state TV network IRIB. So it does seem as though at the moment the strait is still blockaded, and considering that the talks just collapsed, we can be guaranteed that the strait is still blockaded, because they have no reason to open it at this point, because there's been no agreement made that would be beneficial enough in their minds or would end the conflict in our arrangements that would see that the Strait of Hormuz would be reopened. We've also been hearing something else that's quite interesting today in the midst of all this. According to some reports, the People's Republic of China, at least according to CNN, appears to be delivering new air defense systems to Iran within the next few weeks. From what U.S. intelligence has been able to discern, they believe that the Chinese are about to be sending some of their more advanced man-pads to the Islamic Republic of Iran to try and help them out with their air defense scenarios. Man-portable air defense systems, such as the one that you see here, are the kind that the People's Republic of China would most likely be sending. Man-portable air defenses are incredibly small and generally do not use a larger targeting and acquisition radar system like more conventional surface-to-air missile defense systems, say for example the Patriot air defense system, the THAAD, the S-300 or the S-400 or the HQ-19s and 11s from China use. These systems actually use largely thermal imaging to be able to pick up the heat signature of an aerial target. Once that heat signature is picked up, the operator, which is a man holding the weapon, is able to fire the missile, which then once again tracks the heat signature of that aircraft to be able to follow it up and then eventually hit it. Usually these sorts of air defense systems are only usable at lower altitudes and only a few miles away from the operator, as generally these weapon systems have to be operated with the naked eye, unlike larger surface-to-air missile systems which are operated with sometimes over-the-horizon radars and other sorts of systems similar to that. These systems have proven to be exceptionally dangerous and have proven to be wildly dangerous throughout the modern era, but have proven to be exceptionally dangerous to U.S. Air Forces inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran, as the only confirmed ground-to-air kills that the Islamic Republic of Iran has so far against U.S. airframes have all been conducted solely with manpads. They got incredibly close to hitting an F-35 with a Majid. They also shot down an A-10 Warthog with a Majid, and then they shot down an F-15E Strike Eagle with an unknown variant of a manpad, but we're still kind of in the line of thinking that that might have been a Majid as well, but the Iranians claimed that it was a new air defense system, and that has also led us to believing that it may be a brand new Verba manpad that was provided by the Russian Federation, considering that the Russians had just signed a contract with Iran before the war in February to provide them with several thousand units of Verba manpads. So it appears that the Chinese are about to be getting involved in largely providing their very own analogous manpad system that is either comparable to the Russian Verba or is slightly better than the Verba. And this is leading a lot of people to wonder what's going to be happening about this, because a statement was also made by the President of the United States today about this very development, or at least the alleged development that is happening at the moment. As the President of the United States told reporters outside the White House that China will have big problems if it ships arms to Iran. And at the moment, a lot of people are currently talking about this. And Matthew, what are people thinking about it? And what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so we briefly mentioned this last night when it broke. Like, it broke really late last night, like around midnight. But to get deeper into this today, we are hearing that China is allegedly, according to new reports, planning to give new manpads to Iran in just mere weeks. And now, like you just saw, the U.S. is directly threatening China that if they do that, they're going to have, quote unquote, big problems. So what are your thoughts about this? 33% said a direct conflict with the U.S. and China is probably coming soon, while 29% said the USA will back down on this one, and 26% said China will be the ones to back off their actions. So we have heard the U.S. threaten this before toward other countries. I believe just about 3 or 4 days ago, the U.S. said that any country out there that was giving Iran any type of weapon support whatsoever would have 50% tariffs slapped on their nation. So far, we have not seen that slapped on anybody yet, and it's believed that Russia is still giving all kinds of supplies to Iran, including physical support and also intelligence support as well. So we haven't seen that threat get carried out. Now we're seeing a new U.S. threat toward China that they'll have big problems. So maybe China might be treated differently than Russia, possibly. That is certainly a big problem, or right there, it could be possible. So, we'll have to see how this plays out. I'm a little bit undecided on this one because obviously direct conflict with China, that is not something to take lightly. I'm not sure if the U.S. is willing to push it to that point over the manpad issue. We'll have to see about this one. But certainly it is very precarious, I will say that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would believe that there's probably going to be some sort of significant economic actions that might be conducted, possibly tariffs once again, although I believe the Supreme Court has ruled that tariffs are generally unconstitutional in the form that they were levied the last time, so that might not be an option this time. So I would say that generally I believe that either the United States is going to try and create some sort of an economic confrontation with the Chinese to put economic pressure on them to back off, or we're largely going to have to ignore this and allow the Chinese to do as they wish as far as providing weaponry to the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is also why, folks, you don't really allow your enemies breathing room in the midst of a war, like declaring a ceasefire that was never going to work and was never going to lead anywhere like it did right now, because then you could see that other countries in the world get to use that little opportunity of free time to be able to provide assistance to our enemies like the Iranians. If the war was still going on as it had been, the Chinese really wouldn't have the opportunity to really give much of anything to the Iranians. The Russians have had the opportunity to do that the whole war because of the Caspian Sea and the direct sea access through that corridor to Iran. China really didn't, and while they were able to send their tankers through the strait here and there like they did today, they still weren't able to really access the major ports like Bandar Abbas to be able to load off physical weaponry like this. So now that we've given them that little bit of extra time there, that might have been the moment that the Iranians needed to talk to the Chinese and the Chinese Communist Party and to see that they were able to ascertain, or really obtain, any information and confirmation that they could try and get further advanced manpads from the Chinese. So I hope that does address that at least the best I can at the moment, because that generally was a bit of a strategic blunder. At the moment, we've also been able to see that none of the liquefied natural gas tankers are underway in the strait either, much like basically every other vessel that's currently there at the moment. So we're still seeing that there is basically no movement at this point inside the Persian Gulf. Moving us on up and into the Islamic Republic of Iran's capital of Tehran, the Iranians have also stated today that according to their own claims, this also came out before the talks failed, by the way, one of the individuals close to the negotiating team told me that unreasonable demands from the U.S. regime are still hindering the establishment of the desired framework. The Iranian team insists on its demands and conditions to solidify the military achievements it has gained, meaning permanent control of the Strait of Hormuz. However, there may be another round of negotiations tonight or tomorrow aimed at making a final effort to reach an acceptable framework. That clearly didn't happen. But it does appear that even according to this claim today that was made largely inside of Iranian social media, it was obviously clear that somewhere in the talks, even according to their own claims, they were trying to assert that because they were militarily able to take control of the strait, that they should control the strait indefinitely from this point forward, which is an absolutely unacceptable strategic outlook for the United States of America and the Western sphere. We cannot allow the Iranians to control an international waterway like it's their own territorial waters. This sets the precedent that China can actually physically control the entirety of the South China Sea as long as they put enough military might and muscle into it. This also would ensure that around 30% of the free oil in the world would be stopped from exiting the Middle East if the Iranians ever got unhappy with anything, because at that point, it's run like their own waters. So that is, of course, absurd, and that was giving us a very clear indication way back earlier in the day that this thing was going absolutely nowhere, because that would be an absolute no solution sort of a claim right there for us, because we're never going to allow the Iranians, and we shouldn't allow the Iranians, to control the Strait of Hormuz like it's territorial waters of the Iranian state. Moving us on out of that, we also got a couple of additional statements from the President of the United States throughout the day, including this one. We're going to skip past the first part because and just summarize it. The media is lying because they love saying that Iran is winning, when in fact everyone knows that they are losing, and losing big. Their navy is gone, their air force is gone, their anti-aircraft apparatus is non-existent, radar is dead, their missile and drone factories have been largely obliterated, along with the missiles and drones themselves, and most importantly, their longtime leaders are no longer with us, so on and so forth. The only thing they have going in a threat that a ship may bunk into one of their sea mines, which, by the way, all 28 of their mine dropper boats are also lying at the bottom of the sea. We're now starting the process of clearing out the Strait of Hormuz as a favor to countries all over the world, including China, Japan, South Korea, France, Germany, and many others. Incredibly, they don't have the courage or will to do this work themselves. Very interestingly, however, empty oil-carrying ships from many nations are heading to the United States of America to load up with oil. Then the President of the United States also made a statement later on in the day, after that statement was made in the early hours of the morning, then stating the following. I actually cannot play that clip right there. He actually says it in this clip, but I have to paraphrase it because we don't have the rights to show the clip. But the president stated, "We win. Regardless what happens, we win, and that making a deal doesn't matter." My kind of question here, folks, I feel like this is a bit of an obvious one, but if making a deal doesn't matter, then why are we trying to make a deal? What would be the point of that? Because if it doesn't matter because we've already won, why are we even talking to him? We don't need to talk to him. We've achieved everything we needed, according to this claim. So what was the point of wasting everyone's time and flying the vice president out there and, wasting a whole bunch of gas money and gas on the aircraft to go and talk to people that we apparently don't even have to talk to because we don't really need a deal and it doesn't matter? I didn't really get the sense of that claim because, the idea of us going over there and trying to make a deal with them suggests we need to make a deal. And so that's very counterintuitive.
I hope you're not asking me that because I have no idea personally. Like, I couldn't even begin to tell you. Like, I can't reconcile the statements coming out of the United States right now. Like, I know Iran's putting out bullshit propaganda. Like, we know that by default. Iran always does that, so you can always question everything that comes out of Iran. But for the United States, I mean, the United States is doing the propaganda game like crazy. They're also engaging in it themselves this time, which usually we do it to an extent, but we're going like full in. Like, this is like full scale gaslighting right here. We can see with our own eyes that this situation is very precarious, but yet we're being told at the same time that it's nothing to worry about and it's all over, and whatever happens, it's good to go, and stop worrying, you panicking. It's like, I can't reconcile it.
Also, I've seen some people in the chat say, well, we win either way because we win the oil profits. I have to ask, I'm just very curious, is all 33,000 people who are on the stream right now live, are y'all all shareholders of a major U.S. oil company or any oil company? I'm interested in that because really the only people who stand to benefit from, say, rising oil prices would be people who are major shareholders of an oil company, either a U.S.-based one or an international-based one that isn't in the Middle East currently. And I have a feeling the odds are pretty decent that we don't have the entire board of directors for most every international oil company in this chat right now. So I'm having a feeling that a lot of people in America won't be standing to win from rising oil prices like we all knew in the past 5 weeks, because none of y'all are going to be standing to make any money off of the increased profits, sales, and prices per barrel of oil and per gallon of fuel that you get at the pump. I mean, well, I would be honest with you, I would wish that I'm an oil executive right now, but I'm not, sadly.
We might have one oil executive in the chat, but we won't mention that.
Well, I mean, we probably do, but we probably do, but I mean,
they're sitting over there rubbing their hands together, just looking at all these beautiful profits, the biggest, sweetest profits, the best profits.
You know, folks, I guess you could call me a significant oil and fuel executive, Matthew. I actually have quite a significant share of it. You know where I have it?
Where? In
my gas tank. And I guess that counts, right?
Yeah, these days it does. With the price of gas, it actually could be quite valuable.
You know, folks, I'm actually I'm going to go down to downtown, folks. I'm going to put a lock, like a physical, like, deadlock or a deadbolt on my gas cap, and I'm going to charge the tweakers fees for trying to siphon the gas out of my tank. And that's how I plan on standing to make a profit here, folks, in the midst of this thing. Become innovative, everyone. A real capitalist doesn't sit there and go, oh, damn, I'm about to lose my shirt from these rising gas prices. A real capitalist would go downtown and charge the tweakers to siphon the gas out of your tank at an increased price than normal, which is usually free because that's a crime. But nevertheless, outside of that, we do understand that right now there is a significant amount of ships that are currently coming to the Gulf. As the president then also stated, massive numbers of completely empty oil tankers, some of the largest anywhere in the world, are heading right now to the United States to load up with the best and sweetest oil and gas. It really is sweet, folks. I took a taste of it. It tastes like sugar. Don't actually believe that. That's not true.
What does that mean, by the way? Is that a real thing? Like, what is sweet oil? Is that something he just made up, or is that like a real thing?
I think, if I remember correctly, sweeter oils have a far lower sulfur content in them.
Okay, so they got that oil sweet.
Yeah, so there's like sweet crude, and then there's sour crude, and sour crude, is like from places like Venezuela, which is high sulfur content oil, and then we have low sulfur content oil here in the United States, which is generally called sweet oils. So that is actually accurate, but it doesn't taste sweet, by the way, folks. Don't go around like dipping your tongue in crude oil. That would be absolutely idiotic. But beyond that, we have more oil than the next two largest oil economies combined. What are the oil economies? And higher quality. We are waiting for you. So a quick turnaround, by the way, too. It's like a gas station. It was 15 minutes in and out. So apparently we're working off the claim that this is going to be a good thing. I hate to tell y'all, folks, this is not going to be that great of a thing. And I'll tell y'all why. The United States has a fixed production, largely, or a finite production is a better way to say it, of barrels of oil per day. And right now, the United States is the largest oil producer in the world. We extract the most out of any other country on the planet. Russia and Saudi Arabia generally do not produce the amounts we do or even come close to it. But the problem is, folks, is that is a finite amount. And a lot of countries, at least with let me explain it this way, folks, because looking at it on the national level doesn't work in this sort of perspective. It's an international level. the international world works this way. The world as a whole produces a set amount of oil every day. So let's say it's 100 barrels of oil, and the world consumes about 95 barrels of oil a day. That means that there's 5 left over, and those go into surplus. So that goes into the strategic reserves here in the United States and the salt pits down in Louisiana, and it also gets held in some oil tanks in some different areas of the world, like China and Russia. But most, if not all of it, is consumed as it's produced. Then, for example, and let me break this down as well because this is incredibly important. Out of the whole world, Saudi Arabia produces about 30 of those 100 barrels every day. And the Iranians just shut down about 25 of those barrels from getting into the outside world. That means that right now the world is still consuming 95 barrels of oil a day in this hypothetical world, but now we are short about 25 from the 100 that was there every day. So now we're down to 75 barrels of oil being produced a day, but the world is still consuming 95. So a lot of countries have to find where to get that oil from. And they're going to come over here. But that doesn't mean that we're going to be standing to benefit from this. This means that we are going to start seeing that the strategic U.S. oil reserves might be depleted because we're having to try and offset the foreign consumption of it. And not only that, that's also going to start meaning that oil shortages are going to happen in Europe, which is the main buyer at this moment, because they're just trying to keep minimal economic functions a certainty here in the future. And that also means that we'll be seeing that only necessities in economic actions will be conducted here in the United States as well due to the lack of availability of oil. Because if we consume the way we normally do, we would be consuming worldwide 95 barrels of oil a day with only 75 barrels available. We're coming up short about 20. And there's no way to really fix that issue unless we get the oil back out of the Middle East and get that flowing back into Europe's hands and everyone else that bought from the Middle East. So this sounds like a great thing. And it would be a great thing if you were a multi-billionaire and an oil executive, but for most of us here, it's not going to be a great thing, including for Matthew and me, because a lot like all of y'all, we don't own, hundreds of thousands of shares in an oil company. We're just on YouTube, and so the only way we interact with gas and diesel is buying it at a pump. And that means that for a lot of y'all, you're going to see that either the gas isn't available to buy, or if it is available to buy, it might be incredibly expensive even farther than it is right now. But outside of that, a lot of people are talking about what's going to be coming up next as a result of these actions and where in the world the war is going to be leading us probably within the next 6 months. And Matthew, what are people thinking in this long-term prediction right now, and what are you thinking as well?
Okay, so asking in a bigger picture type scenario right here, the Iran war is clearly about to restart. That's pretty obvious at this point. The talks are off. Iran is making all kinds of wild statements again, and the odds of these talks restarting, now that both sides have said, forget it, it's off the table, is pretty much zero at this point. If it restarts, it'll be a shock. So where is this going to lead the world? Not just the United States, but the entire world over the next 6 months. And it looks like 37% said it's going to be a ground invasion of Iran and likely combined with a global recession. 35% said more airstrikes, also combined with a global recession. 18% said the Hormuz will likely reopen in the short term and the recession will be staved off. And 10% said another round of peace talks. So here's the thing. It's as simple as this. If the Strait of Hormuz remains closed in the long term, and when I say long term, I mean several more months, there will almost certainly be a global recession. We're already seeing the first signs of that right now. And all the economic experts are saying that the likelihood of that happening if the Strait of Hormuz stays closed is high because the energy market and petroleum exports out of the Strait, it's pretty much factored into everything. It's in plastics, it's in all kinds of medical products, also cosmetics. It's literally included in everything. So the fact that that's being reduced because the Strait is closed, that is enough to trigger a global recession. So for me, it's between the first or the last two options. I don't think the Hormuz is going to reopen in the short term. I think that option is pretty much off the table unless the U.S. is able to pull off like a very quick raid and able to reopen the Strait that way through a ground invasion. I don't think it's going to be reopened. So I would say the odds of a ground invasion are starting to go up. It's starting to go up tremendously. And also, I think a global recession will follow that most likely. So I'm actually with the 37%. I think we'll be seeing some type of U.S. Ground raid, probably on one of the islands around Hormuz or possibly even Karg Island. We could be seeing that as well. And in the extreme case, we could be seeing an invasion of, let's say, Bandar Abbas, which is a pretty prominent Iranian port. We could see that at the more extreme end of a ground invasion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that I'm probably going to be with the 37% because I would have to generally be of the honest opinion, folks, that this isn't really going to be turning out all too well at any point within the foreseeable future. Um, it doesn't really appear that we have any sort of a good plan at the moment on getting the strait open. It doesn't really appear that the Iranians are willing to open the strait, so we will have to conduct some form of extreme military measures, most likely, to try and forcibly reopen it. If that doesn't really change the situation as far as the flow of oil, we could also see that a lot of the world slows down in economic activity, and the slowing of economic activity results in smaller profits, and smaller profits then result in generally a decrease of economic prosperity, the best way to put it. And that means that we see that there's some form of a global recession or even a global depression that might start to coalesce and take place because of these actions. I hate to sound like a bit of a pessimist, because that's probably one of the worst case scenarios that were presented in the poll. But I think that's probably going to be the case coming on up in the future. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that in mind, it is time for us to move on out of this poll and on into the rest of the news that we have from around the world that doesn't just come from the Middle East and the general developments in the failed talks today and so on, but actually moves us on and into Africa and Europe, as we have a lot of news coming out of Africa and Europe over the course of the day. But before we get to all that, I do have to say humongous and tremendous thanks to so many people for watching this news so far tonight. We've had 35,000 people here at the peak tonight, and about 200,000 people have watched this stream in the first hour. We have to thank you all so much for watching so far. We still have a good amount of interesting and big news to go, as a matter of fact, from around the rest of the world that's not from the Middle East. But I do have to say that we're entirely appreciative of so many people giving y'all's time and watching this channel to be able to hear the major developments that have been going on around the world, and hopefully the best researched and best presented and analyzed way that could be given the circumstances, the information that the public is provided. With that in mind, I do want to take a quick moment here to be able to take 3 questions from the chat to thank a lot of y'all for y'all's time, and also get to be able to talk to a couple of y'all before we move on into all of the other major developments that we've seen throughout the rest of the world over the course of the day. So Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, and also, by the way, we're going to grab our 3 super chats right now, and once we get done with that, we do have some more breaking news that just came out a second ago, but we will wait until the question segment's over to get to that, so stick around and we'll address that here in probably the next 10 minutes. But our first super chat here is going to be a $100 support from none other than Chris Feilbach, and thank you very much, Chris, for that very generous support, and also supporting our work to help us stay on the air reporting this live breaking news. And Chris said, "Sirs, I come bearing orb-related news. A woman on Reddit discovered after much thought that instead of gifting a man flowers, that a rotisserie chicken was a better choice. I believe she discovered something that will forever improve relations."
You know, I've never thought of it that way, but maybe these days, folks, instead of giving someone that you like, a bouquet of flowers, like, if you're a dude and you like a lady, instead of giving her a bouquet of flowers or the other way around, maybe we ought to be giving out Costco chickens instead. That is a true sign of affection right there. Think about it. A juicy, tender chicken that has all the potential of a fullness of a belly, much like the fullness that a relationship provides to the heart. It's truly an incredible thing. And I gotta say, that was a good sales pitch.
In this economy, it's really a better thing. I'd rather have the rotisserie personally, or if I was on the receiving end or the giving end, I'd rather have the rotisserie, to be honest, because I'm like, hell, I mean, $5 rotisserie, that's splurging in this economy, according to the experts.
Man, I got to tell you, and healthy gut juices too. Don't forget that it's rotisserie chickens and healthy gut juices. That's apparently the scourge of Gen Z kids because they're so spoiled buying those $5 chickens and those $2 juices. I mean, how dare they? How dare they have a quality of life at all? But beyond that, I got to say, a humongous thanks to you for that incredible support, Chris Fieldbach. And I got to say, that's a very interesting sort of an idea right there. And I got to thank you incredibly for that support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't have been able to keep this thing running all the way up until today. I've got to thank folks incredibly who support this channel, because if you were here watching this channel right now, for the 30,000 people who are here live, this show would not be able to run if we did not have our super chatters. A lot of y'all who might be new to this channel tonight might be noticing that this channel does not have ads or sponsors on our live streams, and that's not due to you just not finding them yet, or having YouTube Premium on. We quite literally don't have any ads or sponsors that run on these streams, and the only way that we've been able to make this channel economically viable for us to do it as a full-time job is through amazing viewers like Chris Fieldbach and everyone else who has supported tonight, who help through their crowdfunding to keep this channel running and to make this news possible every day. And I've got to thank you all massively, especially Chris Fuelbach at the moment right now for your incredible support, because every bit of support that we get from the audience, which nobody has to provide, but nevertheless they do, helps to make this channel possible and helps to make sure that our news runs every day. It also makes sure that we never have to bend the knee or kiss the ring to sponsors to try and make the news whitewashed to be sponsor friendly. We just get to report the news how we want it and how y'all want it, which I think is the best approach that has ever been made, and hopefully we'll be able to see that it stays that way for the remainder of this channel's life, however long that may be. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again, Chris. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and honestly, you're onto something with that suggestion right there. We'll have to write that one down. But a huge thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we are on and into the next one.
All right, so our second one here goes to Don D, who also puts in a 100. And thank you very much, Don, for that generous support as well. He said the proposed additional weapons by China or Russia to be sent to Iran, in his opinion, once the war resumes, which should be immediate, by air is too risky. So if by ship, why can't we start with our Navy to stop, search, and seize any defensive or offensive weapons?
The issue with that is that touching ships in international waters starts to get into pretty questionable grounds. Once they're in Iranian waters, we really can't touch them at all. If they're in international waters, we could try and touch them. But at that point, we're creating a significant diplomatic confrontation with the country that is the target of that. So if it's a Chinese ship and we stop it, we board it, we arrest the crew, and then we seize the vessel, we have actually created a humongous act towards the People's Republic of China that could be taken as an act of war. And to give you all a little bit of a similar historical incident here, a lot of y'all might know about one of the main reasons why the United States entered the First World War, which was the sinking of the RMS Lusitania, which was a British vessel, but had about 137 Americans on board that died when the vessel was torpedoed off of the coast of Ireland. That was generally a major development for the United States because it was in international waters. The Germans were conducting unrestricted submarine warfare, and the Germans actually had something right at the time. We had actually loaded a whole bunch of guns on board the Lusitania and were shipping them to the British, but still, they attacked a vessel carrying Americans in international waters. It created a huge development, and it got us largely into the First World War, along with the Zimmerman telegram. So we could see something similar like that happen down there near to the area of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and that's generally why we wouldn't want to create a situation like that, and we might just have to let them through. Otherwise, we could start creating significant confrontations with the Chinese and see that the war expands to include China directly as an armed belligerent, possibly. But a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And Matthew, I hear that we have some breaking news. Before we get to this last question, what do we have coming out right now?
Okay, so we do have a little stuff coming out here, and also bear with me for just a second, folks. I'm trying to talk to one of my sources right now about some information. Also, I'm trying to grab the super chats as well, and also trying to scan Twitter and Telegram. So I've got a lot of stuff going on right now, but we do have some breaking news. I was holding back here for a second. Let me grab this real quick. We are seeing a new statement has come out of Iran. It appears to be from Sayed Mohammed Marandi, who was making some goofy statements earlier today as well. It looks like he's made another tweet, and he said, obviously, he calls it the Trump regime wasn't seriously negotiating. That's what's the claim right now coming out of Iran. So they already are starting to lob, more stuff at the United States, basically, which pretty much means nothing. But that's what they're saying right now. Clearly, the tensions are rising again. We're also hearing as well that apparently some of these so-called analysts are saying that Iran's refusal to accept policy red lines on nuclear issues reflects Tehran's belief that it's winning the war and can somehow wait out the United States and pretty much bring the United States to its knees, which, I'm a little bit half and half on that one right there. I think Iran's just also extremists, so they really don't care if they can pull it off. They're just doing it because it's the extreme thing to do, basically. It's real edgy. We'll have to see how it turns out, though. But that is the breaking news as of right now.
And we'll be seeing how that all develops here in the near future. And with that in mind, folks, it's time for us to move on into our last question of the segment, and then we're going to be getting right back into the rest of our breaking news for the night.
And we also have a 50 from DB in Boise. And thank you very much, DB, for that $50 support. And we do appreciate that. Hey! And he said, I'm curious if you have recurring dreams, and if so, are they related to current events happening in the world or topics you cover on the channel?
Generally, I don't really have a great deal of reoccurring dreams. Generally, I dream. I don't remember a lot of my dreams, to be entirely honest with you. I know they're happening when they're happening, and I know that I have dreams, but I don't really remember a lot of them in great detail, unless if they're incredibly traumatic. Like, for example, I get brutally killed in a dream. Then I'll remember that one, but I don't really remember most of them. But a humongous thanks to you for the support, DB in Boise. And I gotta say, let's see. I hope that does address that incredibly well. I just wanted to make sure that I got that right. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, folks, before we move on into the rest of our big, serious news that's come out of the world today, particularly in Europe, I do want to move you all down to the middle of Africa, and specifically to Uganda, to some news that I heard today that was just absolutely hilarious. And I had to read it out to you all because you just aren't going to believe this. I can't show it on stream. Well, maybe I can. I mean, there's just a meme below it that has a specific word in it that's a little explicit, but I think it'll be fine. I think we could show it.
Don't risk it. It's not bad.
Oh, it's not too bad. But Uganda's military chief has demanded $1 billion from the Republic of Turkey and the most beautiful woman in the country for a wife, and has threatened to close the Turkish embassy in Uganda if the demands are not met. So apparently that's currently what the Ugandans are working off of. We understand that the Ugandan military chief has largely assumed de facto control of the nation's government inside of Uganda, and it does appear that he's now demanding from the Turks apparently $1 billion and apparently the hottest chick that they can find. I don't really know if Erdogan has hot Turkish women on tap. I don't really think he does. I don't really think he has that ability at all. I was going to try and crack a joke at that, but I'm like, I don't even know how the hell I can crack a joke on that one and make that kind of stick. I really don't know where in the world to go with it. But beyond that, I just don't really think he has a hot woman tap, where you can just turn it on and turn it off. And currently, it appears that the Ugandan military chief believes that he does. Apparently, we also were additionally able to hear that the Ugandan military chief has now said just recently that he advises all Ugandans to avoid all travel to Turkey for their own safety. So apparently, he's now believing that if Ugandan citizens travel to Turkey, they may be mobbed by these extremely hot and succulent Turkish women, and maybe like overwhelmed by them or something. I don't really know. But I got to tell y'all, I don't know who this guy is. His name is Muhoozi Kainerugaba, or Kainerugaba. And I believe that at this moment, folks, I think we can get the deduction here that Idi Amin, who was once the dictator of Uganda, has been reincarnated in this guy, because this guy sounds about as crazy as Idi Amin at this point. So I gotta tell y'all, folks, Uganda truly is a magical place of magical charms. They produce like a world-class nut job about every other generation, and they somehow end up running the country down there. So we'll be seeing, if he ever gets that succulent Turkish woman and the $1 billion. I have a feeling the answer to that's probably he's never going to be getting that, and he's going to be waiting for a good minute. But anyways, moving on out of Uganda and the crazy developments down there, it's now time for us to move on up into the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. As we were able to hear that apparently, according to the the UK's head of the armed forces, he stated today in an interview with Sky News that the peace dividend that we've enjoyed for the last 30 years is coming to an end. It does appear that the British, according to all accounts, and the government are starting to have a bleak perspective of what the future may bring, and are starting to get a larger idea that war is inevitable at some point on some front somewhere, either against the Russians in the Middle East, against the United States. They really don't know, but it's incredibly clear that the world is a fairly dangerous and unstable place, and for that reason, they are now not only preparing for a war economy, they are also preparing for a greater war with the Russian Federation, and are largely just admitting it to the public and making statements along the lines, laying to the claim that the time of peace is largely coming to an end, that many people have enjoyed and appreciated, crazily enough, really for like the past 30 years or so, ever since the early 90s with the fall of the Soviet Union. But moving us on from that development right there, we have also been able to get some news out of Ukraine. And it's time for us, folks, to move on and into the war in Ukraine. Moving us on into the major developments out of the day today, we were able to hear that a ceasefire was implemented between Ukraine and Russia. We all know that this one's going to go well. To give you all a little bit of the details here, today we have determined the parameters of our response to possible violations of the ceasefire conditions by the Russian army. We all understood who we are dealing with. Ukraine will adhere to the silence regime and will respond exclusively to mirror actions. The absence of Russian strikes in the air, on land, and at sea means the absence of our responses. The Ukrainian army is ready for any development of events at the front, and Ukraine has repeatedly offered Russia various formats for a ceasefire, and we believe that Easter should be a time of silence and security. A ceasefire for Easter could also become the beginning of a real movement towards peace. From our side, it is a corresponding proposal. We discussed with the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine the procedure for the actions of Ukrainian units under the ceasefire conditions. Also, information about the mirror nature of our actions and the possible continuation of the ceasefire after Easter was brought to the Russian side. To let y'all know this, as I really didn't hear much about this leading up to today, and apparently this only went into effect today, apparently the Russians approached Ukraine with the opportunity of a lifetime. The Russians said that they would stop shooting at Ukraine for a little while over Easter, and only thing that the Ukrainians would have to do to see the ceasefire go into effect is that they would have to stop shooting at the Russian army. So the Ukrainians accepted the ceasefire and stated that this is a good thing and hopefully will be leading towards some eventual talks. But they also
actually it was actually not like that. Actually, the Russians unilaterally said there was going to be an Easter ceasefire. They didn't consult with Ukraine whatsoever on it. They simply unilaterally imposed it and told Ukraine, you will abide by the ceasefire or else. And that's the way it went. They didn't even consult Ukraine one iota about the ceasefire. It was completely on the Russian side, and that was it.
Oh, that must have been why I didn't hear about it. I suppose I got those developments mixed up today. But nevertheless, it doesn't really matter all too much, because now we have to tell y'all how badly they violated the ceasefire. According to the Ukrainian General Staff, they have reported that since the ceasefire went into effect, there has been 469 Russian violations, including 22 ground assaults, 153 artillery strikes, and nearly 300 drone attacks involving both kamikaze and FPV units. So it appears that the ceasefire collapsed, and literally within minutes. So, who would have ever expected that? I mean, really, Matthew, who would have expected that the Russians would violate their very own ceasefire that they unilaterally implemented?
Yeah, I was expecting that 100%. Although I will admit it is a little bit weird, though. It's like if Russia was the one to unilaterally say, we're going to have an Easter ceasefire because we want the Russians to enjoy their Easter, not because Putin gives a damn about the Ukrainians. It's all about the Russians because, he wants to screw the Ukrainians over. It's very clear at this point. But even after doing it on his own accord, and Ukraine ended up abiding with it voluntarily. They said, oh, well, we'll actually abide by the ceasefire, even though Putin disrespected Ukraine by not even, consulting them about that. They abided by it. And then Russia broke their own ceasefire that they imposed. I mean, if they came and abide by their own ceasefire that they forced on Ukraine, it's like, do you think you'll be able to come to a deal with those people? Probably not.
Definitely not. They'll never come to a deal with those people. It'll never happen. It'll never happen, I tell you all. But moving us on out from that, it does appear that a lot of people are currently talking about this little failure of an Easter ceasefire right now. And, Matthew, what are people thinking about this? And are people thinking that the war is going to escalate, or are people thinking that the war is going to mellow on out from here? Because peace is clearly on the horizon.
So it looks like 75% of the audience said, yes, war will last a long time. 15% said, no, Russia will have to end it soon. And 2% said, actually, Ukraine will be the ones forced to stop. And we did hear yesterday, some Ukrainian officials said that the war will probably be ending soon. That is extremely unlikely at this point. If Russia came to abide by their own ceasefire that they unilaterally imposed on Ukraine, then they are not going to abide by a deal. It's almost the same situation with Iran. Even if you can meet a deal with Iran, which is a feat in itself, they're going to probably break it. And Russia just broke their own deal that they created and imposed themselves completely by themselves. So I'm with the 75%. The war is not going to be ending. Putin's going to keep this thing running, and unless something drastic happens, like the Putin regime is suddenly ousted, or something wild changes, then the war is going to last for much longer. This is probably going to be one of these multi-year-long wars right here. It's already going on its 4th+ year, so we're probably looking at a decade. To be perfectly honest, I hate to say that, but it's probably going to be an extremely long war. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd say that the war is going to be lasting much longer. To what degree, we don't know. Economically, the Russians might collapse at some point in the future, and the war might not be financially possible for them. Or the Russians might get some significant financial support from a country like China that might be able to float them. Or, the U.S. government might just lift all the sanctions we have on them, which, isn't really out of the cards at the moment. And then we can see that the Russians can financially continue the war for an incredibly long period of time. So I would have to tell y'all, the war is going to be lasting a good bit longer. I don't think it's coming to an end anytime soon. Moving us on from that and on into our location unknowns, we also were able to see a couple of interesting clips today and pictures. First off, we were able to see this Ukrainian Dita SPG provided by the Czech Republic. Look at him.
Very nice. Very, very nice. Look at this equipment.
Look, have a look at the headlock here. But I mean, it's a really nice looking SPG. I mean, it really is something else. Dita SPGs are really neat. I actually got to show one of these to y'all because there was a Dana SPG that was used during the Cold War, but the Dita is largely a slightly upgraded version of that older SPG system. This is what they generally look like, and it's actually a truck-mounted self-propelled gun that uses a turret that has a pretty significant traverse on it, and it also has an auto-loader for the main gun. So it's actually a pretty interesting sort of a self-propelled gun system, and I gotta say, that it is one of the neater ones that Ukraine has been provided. I would still tell y'all that in my honest opinion, the Caesar SPG that was provided by the French is still my favorite, or it's the Badana that's actually built by the Ukrainians themselves, but uses a 152mm gun or a 155mm, depending on the type. This thing is still really cool. I would say this is number 3 for the coolest looking self-propelled gun that they have, and also all 3 of those systems are very much leaning into the shoot and scoot mindset of being able to emphasize rapid mobility and rate of fire over a very short period of time, meaning that they fit well into modern doctrine, which requires that artillery pieces almost always be on the move, and when they set up to fire, it's for the shortest amount of time possible, and they fire off the largest volume of rounds within that short period of time. Moving us on from that, though, and on into our other location unknowns, we also were able to hear that luckily today, some Ukrainian soldiers were actually, well, some Ukrainian prisoners that were held by the Russians were actually released today. These prisoners of war, some of them have been in captivity for years, and we were able to hear that about 100 or so were released today by the Russian Federation, with an equal number being released by the Ukrainians back to the Russians. It's a great thing to see them in return.
How long have these guys been in the camp, the POW camp?
It kind of depends. Some of them have been in for months. Some of them have been in for years.
Geez, yeah, it looks like they've. It's always a different story when you see the Russians being let out of the POW facilities. They look a little bit in better shape than the way the Ukrainians come out of the Russian facilities. The Russians are probably mistreating the hell out of them.
Well, actually, we know that they are because a lot of Ukrainian prisoners of war have come back and have claimed that they have been tortured and they actually have physical scars and signs of torture on their bodies. So we can confirm for the larger part that unfortunately many Ukrainian prisoners of war held in Russian captivity are tortured quite significantly. On the other hand, we don't really see the Ukrainians torturing Russian prisoners of war hardly at all. As a matter of fact, I've never really even seen a Russian prisoner of war that has been returned to Russia even validate a claim that they were subjected, or anyone that they knew in the prisoner of war camp was subjected to any amount of torture, from what we were able to tell. But outside of that, we also got to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours as well. And ole mole, 2 Bobcats!
Oh. 2 Bobcats. Look at that. The little ferocious Bobcats. I'm telling you right there. But tell us more.
Oh, man. What a wonderful day. What a wonderful day. Oh, man. I'm telling you. But according to Miss DC, keeper of the records, troop losses is the highest since mid-March, and 2014 drones is the 19th highest daily loss of the war. Now, breaking this thing on down into the figures, we were able to hear that 1,440 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 6 APCs, 183 supply trucks, 3 main battle tanks, 64 artillery pieces, 2,014 drones, 2 MLRSs, 3 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and the 2 Bobcat skid steers. It was an incredibly good day, and a beautiful one at that. The Ukrainian armed forces are still holding the lines, even in the midst of the Russians breaking their own ceasefire that the Russians unilaterally tried to implement without seeking Ukrainian approval. Moving us on from that, We did not get a lot of video or picture evidence today, all the way from the Kupiansk front and all the way down towards the area of the Seversk front. We do not know why there wasn't a lot of videos that came out of this area today, but nevertheless, the Ukrainians have been able to hold their lines in this area and inflict significant casualties against the Russian armed forces within that front. It's just that sadly, we don't have any video or picture evidence to prove that. In the meantime, we did have a video that came out from Ukrainian armed forces today showing the streets of Konstantinivka in a time lapse and giving everyone a general picture of what the city is looking like right now after being under a siege for nearly a year and a half.
They picked an extra gloomy day to go film this too. I mean, geez, it looks like a storm's moving in.
Man, this is an average day in Ukraine this time of year. It looks like this all the time over there, and usually this is when the Rasputitsa season is at its peak, which it still is largely at the moment right now, but it'll eventually start to dry out once we get into the middle part of April and the later part of April, and then May is the summer months when the ground is the driest and is the most conducive to larger frontline activities.
Looks like the rough part of New Orleans.
You know, it kind of does, actually. It kind of looks like the abandoned suburbs of Detroit. We're about to get plenty of people from Detroit in here that are going to be absolutely livid. It happens every time, folks. Watch, the mail is going to start coming in the chat. You bastard! It's like I can't help you.
I got nothing against Detroit personally, but you know, it is kind of a dump in some of those spots, you know.
If I took the Google Street View dude and I dropped him down in any part of Detroit that was not downtown, because the downtown of Detroit is actually really nice, folks, it's going to look like an unmitigated dump. Like, I hate to say it, because most of the city is completely abandoned. You know what? We're going to find that out in real life right now. We're going to go over here and we're just going to take this random street, and yep, it's abandoned. Like, basically, like there's giant empty lots.
This is a lot nicer, actually, than what we're just looking at in Ukraine. Actually, this is like probably 2-3 tiers nicer than what we just saw on the streets.
But, I mean, you know, still not, you know, like a normal-looking city. I mean, it looks like the ruins of ancient Rome after the fall of Rome, you know? It's like, you know, like, also, it's like, on top of that, like, for people who are like, oh, Detroit's actually nice, it's like, it's a city that was built to house 1.3 million people that only about 300,000 people live in now. Most of the city is literally completely abandoned. Nobody lives in most of it. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on from that. And south of the Konstantinivka front, where we were able to see Ukrainian unmanned ground vehicles attacking Russian positions today. Take a look at them loading this thing, unloading it, actually, off of the trailer, and getting it ready for its work for the day.
That's crazy. It's hook up like a RC controller to that thing and just roll it off the trailer. That's actually very, very cool.
We see them here supplying the Ukrainian armed forces on the front. It's like a little shopping cart, a little delivery system. And now it's driving back.
Also, I have no idea why I find the chat saying, well, Alabama's worse. I mean, I wasn't disputing that. I lived there my entire childhood. I wasn't disputing that at all. I was waiting for somebody to mention Alabama. I was like, some parts of Alabama, it looks like it's like from a different planet. Like some parts of that state, you go into some parts, you're like, what the hell? It's like, am I still on Earth? Am I still in America? It's like, it doesn't look like it.
Man, I tell y'all, folks, some places in Alabama, you would think that the United States has abandoned those parts of the country, and it has, sadly, in many such cases. Oh, look, an owl! And now they're on the way to start greasing some Russians. You could see the machine gun on that one. Oh, and it looks like the Russians tried to hit it, and they missed by a good bit. And now we see the Ukrainians laying down some heat and getting that drone closer to the Russian positions. Now they're just giving a little pot shot here and there. We can see the barrel smoking for a second. I saw LKPME say, Bessemer? Oh, you bet. Bessemer is like one of the roughest places. Shout out to anyone who lives in Bessemer. Y'all are living in the trenches, basically. But that's seen in that clip. And we were also able to see the logo for the Ukrainian armed forces, well, one unit of the Ukrainian armed forces, which oddly enough looks very similar to the Vanos Gaming logo, if any of y'all have noticed that before. Like, every time I see that, I always think of Vanos Gaming. But anyways, moving on from that, we also were able to see that near to the Berkrovsk front, we were able to see a Russian Buhanka getting hit in a first-person POV in the midst of the night. Blip!
Bro, did this guy just skid down the road?
Bro, did his ass go
bro,
like down the street?
That was his ass. Bro, like, play that again.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Bro, this dude's got road rash bad. That's a bad case of road rash right there. That's tough.
Yeesh, man, I'm telling you, man, like, he's gonna stand up and his pants are literally just gonna be gone on his ass. Like, it's just gonna be like bare ass back there. It's gonna be rough. But that's what the Ukrainians are doing to the Russian forces down at Pokrovsk. Nobody's safe even in the nighttime hours anymore, because a lot of Ukrainian drones that are used for nighttime operations are actually equipped with some form of night vision or thermals, meaning that they're able to see the Russians even in the midst of night, basically making it broad daylight for attack conditions. For that reason, even nighttime movements and resupplies like the one we were seeing right there are still largely unsuccessful. And we can see that, like that unfortunate Russian there, he got a bad case of road ass, and he will most likely need a significant amount of ointment for that, or as the Russians call it, oinkment. Get it? But anyways, moving on from that, we also get to see that south of the Pokrovsk front, the Ukrainian Su-25s were also working hard on dropping some French AASM-250 hammers upon them Russians. And there goes the Su-25, violating every EPA emission handbook out there in the United States right now, and dropping those bombs to really put one on the Russians. And that Su-25 is pulling some aerobatics right there. Some evasive maneuvers, they call them. Now, let's see those impacts. Were they juicy? Or were they not? Well, sadly, we're not going to find out, because this clip only shows the Su-25. And there it went, off into the sunset. We also were able to additionally see the Ukrainian armed forces down in the very southern front in Zaporizhia taking out some Russian drones, including the Skiran 2, built in the Russian Federation. And they're about to get them. And a bink, and they got it.
I think sure is flying high. It's flying like up there at the airliner level. It looks like.
Man, honestly, man, it's like how high can this thing go? But anyways, that's the end of that clip. And moving us on out of the entirety of the front line of Ukraine, it's now time for us to move on up to Kyiv and cover the speech of the president of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, on day 1508 of the news from around the world. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Peach!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Сьогодні важливо, що вдався обмін. Довго готували. Кожне повернення наших людей має значення. Ми пам'ятаємо про всіх. Ми шукаємо по кожному прізвищу. Буває, що знаходимо людей через роки, коли нічого не було відомо про людину. А головне, щоб можна було повернути додому в Україну. Я вдячний усім, хто працює заради обмінів, усій нашій команді, координаційному штабу, розвідкам, Службі безпеки України, МВС, звісно, армії. Найбільше кожному українському підрозділу, який на фронті забезпечує поповнення обмінного фонду для України. Ваша сміливість, воїни, це гарантія, що зможемо повертати людей. Військові полонені, цивільні, про всіх ми пам'ятаємо. Сподіваємось, що обміни продовжимо вже найближчим часом. Принаймні, з нашої сторони всю роботу для цього виконуємо. Детально говорили вчора і сьогодні з головнокомандувачем, з секретарем РНБО, також зі Служби безпеки України про режими тиші. Зараз на Великдень Україна пропонувала це вже неодноразово. І добре, щоб дійсно вийшло. Великдень має бути часом безпеки, часом миру. Було би правильно, щоб припинення вогню тривало і далі. Ми дали цю нашу пропозицію Росії. Якщо Росія знову бере війну замість миру, це ще раз продемонструє світу, і зокрема Сполученим Штатам, хто і чого насправді хоче. Україна буде діяти дзеркально. Завдання визначені для нашої армії. Якщо російських ударів не буде, то не буде і наших відповідей. Ми пам'ятаємо, як було в подібних ситуаціях раніше, та чітко знаємо, з ким маємо справу. Якщо не буде російських ракет, не буде російських дронів, ми будемо теж дотримуватись тиші в небі. Для фронту завдання аналогічно, але право на відповідь у кожного українського підрозділу є. Наш пріоритет – це реальна безпека. Щодо можливості продовжити припинення вогню, сигнал росіянам доведений. Окремо, ми працюємо із партнерами, щоб далі рухатись в перемовинах та в гарантуванні безпеки. Україна на зв'язку з американською стороною, на постійному зв'язку, на різних рівнях. Ми готуємо дуже активну роботу на найближчі тижні із нашими європейськими партнерами. В понеділок буде детальна доповідь Рустема Умєрова по всім домовленостям на Близькому Сході. в Затоці, в інших країнах, поруч з цим регіоном, по нашому експорту безпекових можливостей. Фактично, всі партнери однаково сприймають це успіхом України і кажуть про це, що Україна реально додає безпеки. Є інтерес в Азії щодо цього. Вже є перші домовленості в роботі. Це точно посилює і Україну також. Зараз Рустем Умєров вже в Україні погоджує драфти угод. І ще сьогодні була доповідь прем'єр-міністра України Юлії Свириденко. І енергетика – це перший пріоритет у внутрішній роботі зараз. Дуже важливо, що енергосистема працює дуже непогано. Нам вдалося додати генерацій. Дякую всім, хто працює, щоб цей Великдень був зі світлом. Слава Україні!
Героям слава.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from the President of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, here on day 1508 of the news from around the world. And with that in mind, folks, it's time for us to move on into the second segment of this stream, which is where we get to talk to every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, what a blast it's going to be. We get to talk about literally anything and everything here in this question segment, except for religion, politics, climate change, and whether the A-10 is relevant in modern warfare or not. But I do have to say, folks, that I am absolutely enthused and greatly appreciative on the behalf of myself and Enforcer Matt, the both of us here on the Enforcer channel, for all of y'all watching so far tonight. We still have 21,000 people here live with us right now. That's quite a lot of people. And we also had 35,000 people here with us live at the peak. I've got to say that we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative of so many of y'all watching and spending your time here on this channel, because we love to know that no matter what, y'all consider this channel to be a primary source of news. I hope that we were able to break that major development that just happened in the negotiations live on air the best we could, considering the news had just come out, and I hope that all of our news afterwards has also been incredibly informative and also quite humorous with the news that came out of Uganda today. But outside of that, folks, it is time for us to move on into all of the questions that we have. And we have quite a many of them, folks. A lot of them. So many of them that it'd make your head spin. I mean, a lot of people have been calling up and saying, wow, you have the biggest and the greatest of super chats. Some of the best, some of the greatest. I gotta tell you, a lot of people will be calling us up on the phone. They go, sir, I love your super chat segment. It's so good. It's so big and huge and great. It's the biggest one ever. They call it the Big Beautiful Question segment. And we're going to be getting into it right now. So, Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so we are looking out for more breaking news tonight. I did find out apparently why we have not gotten a statement right now from the presidential office at the moment. It appears to be they're currently attending what appears to be a sporting event right now in Miami. That's probably why we haven't gotten a statement. I'm seeing it looks like according to the pictures, and someone correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm seeing this on Twitter, is people posting pictures appearing to show the Secretary of State at the sporting event, and also it appears the president's there, and it looks like they are currently watching possibly a UFC fight from the looks of it. So that appears to be where they're at, unless these pictures are old at this point, but I'm seeing videos as well coming out of it. So we are not expecting to hear from them tonight, apparently. Well, I guess we'll be hearing from them maybe tomorrow possibly about that. But of course, we are on the eve of the restarting of a pretty serious war. So we're waiting to hear from the presidential office. But anyway, so jumping into our super chat questions, our first one here is going to go to none other than Will Fessler. And thank you very much, Will, for that $50 support. And we do appreciate that very, very much. He said, what is the possibility that this is the start of a world war, like not a nuclear one, but a conventional one?
I would say that right now the Iran war is a standalone, probably is not going to become a world war unless if it's so badly mismanaged that somehow it does become one. But that kind of mismanagement would be enigmatic for the large part. It would almost be unheard of. So I would say that generally, I don't think this is going to be turning into any sort of a world war. I think this is going to largely be maintained and largely contained as a regional one. But I do thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And I hope that does address that incredibly well, at least in my opinion. But I will tell you this. If you take the world in its totality at the moment, you could certainly say that we're getting very close to a world war. It's just that I don't think that Iran is going to be the catalyst per se, as of a conflict that somehow coalesces all of the ongoing wars and fronts between the Axis and Allied powers together to then turn that into a world war. I don't really think that Iran's going to be that one. I think that will probably end up being Ukraine or Taiwan, to be entirely honest. But a huge thanks to you once again for that support. I hope that has addressed that the best I can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, I've pulled this up to verify this real quick because I'm seeing on Twitter, it looks like the president's at this sporting event. It looks like I'm looking at Reuters Connect about 1 hour ago. It says President attends UFC 327 at the Kaseya Center in Miami. So it appears to be he is likely there. So that's apparently why we haven't heard anything. I was wondering why there was silence because, this is a pretty big deal. You got the vice president making a very, very brief statement while he was still in Pakistan, which is kind of wild, by the way. I would have thought they would have waited until they got him safely out of the area before he made a statement like that. But he made it while he was there, very short. Then he basically didn't run, but he sped walked out of that whole press conference, got on the plane, it took off, it was out of there, which was probably smart. But we'll be hearing something maybe late tonight, possibly. I wonder.
Man, listen, Matthew, you're making like a big deal out of this. Obviously, watching some guys tussle in some chain link fence cage is way more important than a war starting for the entirety of the country a second time over again. I mean, clearly, Matthew, your priorities are completely backwards. Obviously, the president has to watch these two guys try and knock their teeth out, and then we'll get around to, whether or not the citizenry of this republic will be affected in the hundreds of millions because of what we just heard coming out of Islamabad. I mean, obviously, Matthew, you should know better.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I'm like, if we're wanting to see a fight, I mean, this fight in the Middle East here is it's like a UFC fight times what a million, like a magnitude of a million times more serious than a UFC fight. So, I guess maybe they got boring and they had to move on to something a little different.
Oh, he had to fly back down to West Palm Beach, knock around a little golf ball here and there, go watch some guys knock their teeth out or something. You gotta have your priorities straight, folks. Like every time we were about to get ready for the show, I always sit there and think, what'd be really funny is if I go to Salt Lake and I go make the brine shrimp jump through a little hoop that I bring up there. I always thought that was more important than the show. You gotta make sure your priorities are right like that, everyone. Instead of making sure to feed your kids and your family by going in and clocking into your job, you gotta go down to the casino and gamble every once in a while or something, make sure your priorities are in line, everyone. That's what I'm trying to say. Put the most important stuff first. But anyway.
You said they have, wait a minute, you said they have the shrimp on the treadmill in the Salt Lake? When was that happening?
Oh, no. The brine shrimp. You bring like a little hoop, like a tiny one's it's like the roundness of your pinky finger, and you bring that down there and you hold it up right above the water and the brine shrimp jump through it. It's like a great pastime out here. Haven't you ever done it before?
I've never heard of that, but I mean, if it was a shrimp on a treadmill, I might have to prioritize that over the war. I might possibly have to. I've always wanted to see that.
I've always wanted to see a shrimp on a treadmill myself. Have you ever seen that, folks? Like, it's actually wildly fascinating. They really get at it on those treadmills. But anyways, with that, all jokes aside, folks, and all the sarcasm aside, it is time for us to get on into the questions again. So, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so jumping into our next super chat, this one is going to go to Lost, who puts in a $50 support, and thank you very much, Lost, for that support, and we also appreciate that. He said, the Strait of Hormuz falls under international law. It's not like a canal dug and built for some expected profit. Natural pathways are free, and Iranian control of the strait is unacceptable in every way, and other countries have equal rights to the strait.
Exactly. That's what we've been saying as well. I mean, that's clearly the case. There is no way in hell that we can allow the Iranians to unilaterally control an international waterway like that. That would be absolutely detrimental to us. And not only that, who in the world gives them the right to completely control the strait? Nobody. It's an international waterway. It's been there for tens of thousands of years. And there's absolutely no way in hell you can say, oh, this is like the Suez or the Panama, or the Panama Canal, where the Panamanians get to control the canal and the Egyptians get to control the Suez. It's like, no, this is a international waterway. It's been around forever, and the Iranians have absolutely no right to be able to stop traffic or control traffic through that strait. I definitely agree with you on that one, Lost, and I thank you incredibly for that support. And speaking the common sense that is incredibly common these days, but for some people isn't so common. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is going to go to none other than Douglas Day. And thank you very much, Douglas, for that 50. He said, I served on DDG 43, 85 through 89 at DS3. And when we were doing escorts in the Gulf, we mapped the routes tankers took before we dared sailing in when it really was mined. And I'm sure the Navy's watching tankers that have already passed tracks, mapping them within 6 feet.
And thank you so much for the support, Douglas Day. And that would be true. But the thing is with that, though, is that we have not seen a single, and I mean not a single tanker, go through the Strait of Hormuz just north of the UAE or anywhere within the international waters. They either skirt right along the coast of Iraq or they go to the north of Iraq Island and then wrap around that way. And that's kind of the problem that we have right now with the claim that the destroyer made it through and it was able to get through the minefield, because the thing about both of those routes is that that would have led that warship into Iranian territorial waters in either form, whether it was south of Iraq Island and right along its coastline or north. That's all Iranian territorial waters, and that's why I was saying that probably isn't likely, because beyond that, the only way that that ship would have been able to get through is either going straight through the middle of Hormuz, where the minefield is believed to be right now, and we don't know exactly where they are, or near to the coast of the UAE, which we've also seen basically hardly a ship, or almost not a single ship, pass through of any size, or I believe of a steel construction. So that's why I was saying, I don't really believe that they went through, because if they did, they would have literally had to pass right through Iranian waters, which would have been a violation of Iranian sovereignty and basically a wartime act in the midst of ceasefire and negotiations that were going on in Islamabad. So that, in my mind, was fairly unlikely. I was like, that probably wouldn't happen because that could jeopardize the talks. Then the only other option at that point is for them to go somewhere where the minefield would be believed to be. And at that point, we don't know where they are. And then that's basically playing Russian roulette. And so I do thank you incredibly for the support. But that's also why, speaking of that, and speaking of what you just said right there, Douglas, I was saying that I think it's highly unlikely that they went through, because we've just not seen a single tanker go through the middle, well, no ship for that matter, go through the middle of the Strait of Hormuz or right off of the coast of the UAE that is a steel-hulled vessel that would be able to prove whether there's any mines there or not. And that's why I was saying I think might be a spoofed location of that ship, because otherwise they would have had to go through Iranian territorial waters, which wouldn't have been done. But a humongous thanks to you for the support and help this channel to keep running. And I hope that addresses why I was saying that earlier, because I'm not saying that the Navy has absolutely no way in hell, because you're absolutely right there about how they would be able to know that without demining it physically. But due to those limitations, that's also why I was saying, that's not really, that couldn't really be highly likely, at least in my opinion. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And we are moving on to our next one here. Let's see here. Also, by the way, this isn't really news. I was just doing some looking here. I'm seeing pictures of the Secretary of State at this UFC event right here. He's throwing up these hand symbols. I'm not sure exactly what they mean, but not that they might not mean anything. It could just be he's trying to look cool for the camera. You never can tell. But they are definitely out here having a good time. That's for damn sure. Quite interesting. But moving on to our next one here. This one is going to go to, yeah, there he is right there. Look at him, looking a little.
He's looking rather tan.
Yeah, is that a natural tan? Is that like a tan where you go sit out in there and you get a little bit of sunlight all day long? I thought these guys were in the office all day.
Dipping into the spray can a little. Honestly, kind of looks like the same kind of spray tan kind of a thing applied to someone else. I'm not gonna lie. Are you noticing that?
I really don't know. I've never really seen what that looks like up close, the whole spray tan thing. It could just be a natural tan, maybe, possibly. I'm just not totally sure.
I don't know, but yeah, it does appear that they're down at a UFC event. That's for sure. Well, that's great to know, everyone. That's always good to know that in the midst of the collapse of talks in Islamabad, the U.S. government the president is making a response because he's, too busy having fun. Always good to know that the elected, public servants are always having fun and prioritizing fun over work, because, they always say that all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. But what I say is that elected officials generally have to be all work and no play, and it's fine for them to be dull boys, because it's kind of what we voted, for, you know what I mean? Kind of doing the job and everything. But that's just my take. I don't want to get political there. That's just my opinion that, presidents going and having 30 rounds of golf, which is a fairly common thing over the past 26 years, really doesn't look that good. It you know what I'm saying?
Somebody said, go out to that picture of Marco when he's throwing up the little hand sign for a second. Let's see this thing again real quick. I saw someone make a comment. I was like, I kind of see the resemblance a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, he's throwing up that sign right there. Oh, I don't know about now. I don't know about that sign's over there in the comments. Like I'm whoever posting that over there, wilding out with that. But I think Marco is throwing up a different sign right here. This is the sign of the U.S. forces right here. I think he's trying to message to the American people and send us a message. He's trying to send the Iranians a message too. I think the message from the United States tonight is that the U.S. forces might be smoking that Iranian pack very, very soon, possibly. That might be the message out there. Also, that guy over there on the right, he is just like loving it whenever he's looking at. Like you see him up there, he's just loving it, man. He's just like, oh, I love this fight.
Man, I gotta say, man, he loving it. He loving it. Everyone's having a fun time out here. Man, the whole U.S. government's distracted with a couple of people punching each other. It's a wonderful time. It's a wonderful time. You know, if Iran attacked right now, we might not even see the U.S. military respond until tomorrow, because, you know, they'd have to get a good night's sleep after having all the fun, and then get around to giving an answer as to what we could do. But also, getting back to my whole thing, you know, like, I gotta say, man, don't you think it's kind of like not really a good look that, like, for like the past 20 something years, basically every single president's like off basically hanging out at like Camp David or a golf course or something, more than they are actually in the White House, you know? That seems to be a reoccurring trend amongst them all, you know?
Yeah, it's really more about optics, in my opinion, because in reality, the president being in the White House during a time like this, will it really make a difference? Probably not. And that's also not making a statement just about this current president. I mean, they're supposed to sit there so that way they look like they're like highly involved in it. But in reality, though, there's probably no immediate decision that needs to be made. But I mean, it's just the optics. It's not the best look.
Well, yeah, but it's like it is the optics, and the optics matter a whole lot. Like, you don't see Zelensky going off to a vacation resort or anything in the midst of a war, because it would make him look like a bastard. You know what I'm saying, folks? Because people always talk about, oh, Zelensky's robbing that U.S. dollar pack. It's like, well, yeah, but you never see him like using the money. Like, you never see him around at like a golf course in Italy with, I got 3 houses, 2 in Italy, 1 in Rome. You don't see that kind of stuff, because he's always present. He's always showing that he's either working with the Ukrainian government on a whole bunch of things pertaining to the war, or he just looks like he's around and doing something, because the optics are important. When the British were getting bombed in 1940 during the Battle of Britain, did y'all know where the royal family was? They went into Buckingham Palace in the middle of London to basically sit there and sit in a bomb shelter with everyone else in London to show that they were there. Did the royal family at that point have any military command or any military authority? Not really. Did they have any governmental decision-making abilities? No. But they were going to be there with everyone else and getting bombed all the same, just to show them that they were there and they were with them. And that's the thing that I find that's a little bit annoying. And someone, of course, asked in the chat, well, literally, who cares? Well, everybody cared when the last president did it, and everybody cared when the president before him did that too. And everyone always wants to say, oh, look, they're just vacationing and having fun. And I gotta be honest with you, I'm kind of a person of the mindset, an elected official, even if they have nothing to do, needs to look like they're busy, and they need to show the public that they're either there for them, they're supporting them, or something 24/7. I don't like the idea of them going around and having fun more times than looking like they're working. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Chris Feilbach once again, and thank you very much, Chris, for that $50 support yet again. We do appreciate that. And he said, what the hell is up with the Alabama white sauce? Is it good or is it bad?
It's good.
And I think it's good, personally. Usually it goes with another Alabama dish called fried green tomatoes. You usually dip the tomato in that, and it's like a tangy, kind of like semi-spicy sauce a little bit. But it's actually pretty good, but I've never really used it on anything else except for that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that Alabama white sauce is incredibly good, especially with fried green tomatoes. You can put it on other stuff, but I've rarely ever had it with anything other than fried green tomatoes. But I would say that Alabama white sauce is a solid 9 out of 10 sort of a sauce. A really good one. And I really like it. I really enjoy it a great deal. And so I got to say, I hope that has addressed that well. A big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, it is time for us to move on and into the next. Also, I see many people. I see so many people having an issue with me having with the president going and golfing. People are like, "Well, there's such a thing as self-care." Well, let me tell you this, folks. Let me tell you this. This is something crazy. Would y'all believe this? We run a YouTube channel, which, as far as the importance to this country, is insignificant compared to the office of the president and the kind of role that plays. Out of 1,508 days of doing this, we have had I think in total, about 2 weeks off. And if we were counting up all the days over 4 years or more. And if we are that dedicated to doing this, why in the world is it too much to ask for the elected representative of 360 million people to at least look like they're that busy? Like, I don't really care if they are that busy, just to look that way. Because if we can do it, they can do it easily because they had about 100 million people vote for them. We only have a couple of 100,000 people watch us every night. And yet we take this more seriously than a lot of presidents over the past 2 decades have taken the office of the President of the United States. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Based Soda, who puts in a 50. And thank you very much, Based Soda, for that support as well. They said, I wish one day for an LSA slam dunk clip in any of these conflicts. Imagine you get to hear LSA chanted after a successful operation.
You know, that would be interesting, Base Soda. You know, one day we might be able to see that. I would say that would be kind of based, because as long as those actions are done in the best interest of this republic, long live the LSA would be well in line with that sort of a thinking. And I gotta say, thank you so much for the incredible support and help with this channel to keep it running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help the LSA to stay alive. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from Jenna, last name Tolls. And thank you very much for that $20 support. They said, fart of the shill.
That sounds like a movie, like Silence of the Lambs, like Fart of the Shill. I've never heard of that one before. That's a new one right there. And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Jenna, and helping this channel to keep it running. And giving us a new phrase to use there. We might try and insert that into a sentence someday. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And I hope that has addressed it the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're on the next one.
And we also have another $20 super chat from Jenna, who said, we're about to get the wildest presidential statement of all time on Truth Social. I just feel it. And we might, I mean, it's very possible that we could get a midnight tweet, possibly, because it seems to be that those are the most common form of the statements that are put out. It seems to be around like midnight or really, really late in the evening. So it could be that happens, possibly. I would be curious to know, like, this is probably like getting too deep, but I'd be curious to know, like, where is the president when he usually makes these like really late night posts and stuff like that? It's like, is he in bed? It's like, is he like, you know, like what is he doing? It's like, it's midnight. I would assume, you know, somebody his age is probably trying to get some sleep because, you know, he's not, I mean, they say he goes nonstop, but I'm like, you know, everybody's got to sleep. He's human. He's not like an alien or something. So it's like, I don't know, where is he at? It's like, I would assume he's probably like getting in bed to go to sleep or something when he's making these posts, I would imagine.
I would assume. I mean, you know, but we're probably going to get one of the craziest statements. I will admit on social media. It's probably going to. I have a feeling, folks. It's either going to be very close to the whole civilization's going to die tonight thing, or it's going to even top that one. I'm pretty sure. Because you know, it like whether or not we make a deal, we've won statement doesn't really stand too well when the Strait of Hormuz is still closed, which is still, you know, a major economic crisis that is still happening right now. So, you know, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And I hope that does address that the best that I can. And a humongous thanks to you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also have a $20 support from Space Fraggle, and thank you as well for that support. They said it's going to be a long night, Enforcers. Coffee's on me, and how long do you think this war will last?
I think this war is definitely lasting for several more months at this point. It's going to be lasting into the end of this year, I would say. But a humongous thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And I got to say, a big thanks to you for those kind words and helping us to have a coffee fun, because it's certainly going to be a long night, as it has been for months, years really at this point. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. Do you think there's anything wrong with like with a, you know, what is it? What do they call it? An on the throne post? Is there anything wrong with that necessarily, or is it something that's acceptable?
For who? The president or us or who?
Oh, I mean, anybody. I mean, do you think that's like an acceptable thing to do, or is that something that should be banned?
Something that should kind of be banned. I mean, like, you know, just think of the optics of that. That doesn't really look professional to be messaging from the shitter, you know, like that just doesn't really come off as like.
But what if nobody knows? What if nobody knows? Like, all they see is the post. They're not really sure what was the context. They're not really sure if it was, you know, from the throne. It could have been from the car. Like it could have been from there, possibly. I mean, nobody would ever know.
I mean, I guess, but you know, at least like when I like to be honest with y'all, whenever I do anything, I'm never in the restroom. Like, I'm always like sitting at my desk or something, because it gets me into the mindset to get to work, like, and make sure to, focus on what we should be focusing on. So I wouldn't really think so. Like, whether people know it or not, I'm just not really one to like post anything or do anything much while I'm on the shitter. So, like, just to be completely upfront with y'all.
Honestly, I will say my best thoughts come when I'm in the shower, like usually in the morning. Like that's actually most people say that, by the way. Like most people will say, oh, whenever I'm like getting a shower and stuff like that, like the best thoughts pop into my head then. It's like if there was a way, if somebody had like an invention out there where you could just like shout something out and be like, write this down, and it like takes it down and like puts it into like the notepad or something like that, that would probably be pretty decent, actually, right there.
Monster Life said Lyndon B. Johnson used to work from his toilet. Yeah, but he used to also go into like cabinet meetings and unzip his pants and be like, look at it. Like, and it's like, maybe he's not the best example. Lyndon B. Johnson was like unhinged, like literally, like I don't know if y'all have ever heard about Johnson's, Johnson. But he would go around all the time with that. Like y'all got to read into that, because that was a real deal that every single staffer talked about. Because he'd be like, Mr. President, here's a report that came out of Vietnam today. And he'd be like, wait a minute. Shh, look at it. Isn't it something? And it's like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? Like, there's something really wrong with him. Like, he needs help. But, maybe not the best example, at least coming from that guy. But,
oh, man, that one got deep.
Man, I mean, honestly, like, think about that, though, man. If you were a White House staffer and you walked in to talk to the president for the first time ever and he did that to you, dude, it would be like a flashbang going off in your head. It'd be like, what the hell? This is the president? It's like, honestly, that's just like a bizarre, like, just weird. But anyways,
I'd probably quit, pack up my stuff in the box, and I'd probably head out.
Man, I mean, well, man, I honestly, I'd be like, it's been an honor serving you, sir. I'm gonna go table my resignation here, and I'll see you around. Thank you very much. Like,
have you ever seen this before? It's like, no, I haven't. I never expect to see that again. I will be heading out. Thank you. It's like, I'll be leaving.
Man, honestly, it's like, but anyways, with that, I hope that does address that little side note somewhat well. Maybe not the best example for like a mentally sound kind of a president. We see, yeah, he did a lot of work on the toiletry, but he also did that. But me personally, folks, I think that generally you gotta kind of like, not be on the shitter when you're making official statements as the president, at least, or really for any professional position for that matter. But anyways, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
We also have a $50 support from Marion Deemert, who puts in that 50, of course. And thank you very much, Marion, for that support. And Marion said, keep chiving on. You both rock.
And thank you so much for the support. And we will keep chiving on, because we have to do it. We have to. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a super chat from none other than Based Soda yet again, who put in a 50. And thank you very much, Based Soda, for that multiple supports tonight. They said, how much is the paywall to get a Leaf Spring Army challenge coin?
There sadly isn't a paywall yet, because we've never had one of those yet. But maybe we'll be able to make one at some point in the future. I think that's about the 20th request that we've had for a challenge coin. And we might see about trying to make one, because I know that challenge coins are a really big thing for folks who were in the military or are in the military. People who have been in the military absolutely love challenge coins. And we might be able to make one, especially for all the folks that were a part of the military that watch the show, because about a third of our audience is current or formerly serving. So we might definitely look into that when we get a merch store up and running. I can tell you all this, folks, we do have a couple of things that we know that we're going to be putting on a merch store when it's open back up again. The LSA flag is the most requested item ever. Sadly, I'll have to tell y'all, it's not going to be able to be autographed this time around like the first run of flags. So the first run of flags is going to probably be the only one that was ever autographed as purchased. The rest of them will never be autographed. But if you ever run into us in public, and you happen to have it on you, and I happen to have a golden Sharpie on me, I will autograph it. Like if y'all ever find me somewhere, like, which is probably pretty rare. But outside of that, we will be getting the flags out. We'll definitely be trying to get some t-shirts out. a few, well, probably just one type of mug. It'll probably just be the LSA mug, and then also LSA challenge coins. Basically, mostly LSA branded merch, because I know that people absolutely love the LSA, what it stands for, the imagery, the anthem, and everything about it. And it's a really cool thing, and we definitely want to get a lot of that back out there for y'all. I also got to tell y'all, I haven't started working on this yet, but the 5th anniversary is coming around, and I'm planning, folks, on having a special design of the LSA Eagle that kind of like stylizes the number 5 and implements it into the Eagle in some way or form, so that way we can make a special 5th anniversary edition of the LSA flag and merch, so that way when it comes around, y'all can all not only get the normal LSA merch, but y'all can also get the 5th anniversary merch as well. So that'll be really cool. I think that'll be a neat one. What do you think, Matthew?
Yeah, it could be. It could be. I just can't make any promises about it because I'm not sure when that's going to happen. So, it's probably a decent ways off.
It might be. It might be, folks. We just don't know. We just don't know. But beyond that, though, I hope that does address that well. I see a lot of people asking for all kinds of stuff. We generally, by the way, folks, will probably have to do most everything as limited edition runs, because holding physical inventory is something that is pretty expensive to do, even if we outsource this, which we'll probably have to find a way to outsource it to do it reasonably this time. So holding physical inventory is tough, and doing print-on-demand stuff, to be entirely honest with y'all, usually results in a slightly lower quality. So we'll have to do pre-orders on basically everything and then ship it all out that way. And we'll have to find probably a third-party company that'll be able to do that, because when we took it all on ourselves and did it, it became overwhelming at every level and really took away a lot of our ability to just work on this full-time, because we had to spend most of our time trying to sort all of that out and get it done. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that question well, Baystow, and hopefully we'll be able to get something like that out here in the future. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Becca Fly, and thank you very much, Becca, for that $20 support. And they said that it appears to be, allegedly, the President of the United States and Secretary of State are attending a UFC event tonight as negotiations with Iran collapse in Islamabad, raising the risk of a massive war restarting. And that does appear to be, I'm seeing images on Twitter coming out appearing to show both of them at that UFC event. I also saw a Reuters article saying that they were there as well. So it appears like they are likely there from the looks of it. So, I guess they're at the fight. I'm not even commenting too much about that, about my personal opinion. I think most people kind of know what I'm trying to say without even having to explain it. It's pretty obvious. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, well, Matthew, but yeah, they're apparently there at the moment from what we would know, or they were there. So that's generally why our response isn't coming out. I gotta say, folks, it's so interesting to me, because Matthew's not really saying comment. I already said my comment on it earlier. I find it so interesting, folks, how people just apply rules, like bots and all, just apply rules separately depending on political party. Because I'll be honest with you, I literally said the statement as it was. Over the past 20 years, every president spends more time from the public's image at golf courses and at recreational events than they do actually doing their job. And I think that that's not a good look, and that's not good for symbolism's purpose. That's not good for the public to see, in my opinion. And whether people like that or not, I'm sorry for you, but that's going to be my stance. If I was the President of the United States, I would make sure that I'm hardly looking like I'm having any fun, because the job isn't fun. These people put themselves up there, to make this clear. These people decided to run for president. They then won their primary for their party, and then they won the national election to become the president. They chose the job. The job is stressful, but that comes with the territory. So you either get with it or you resign. That's my honest opinion on it. And I don't really like it when people go around pretending like they're supposed to be having fun, because they can kiss my ass for that point. They need to get to work.
How are they getting more time off? We're just as people like to say, we're just monitoring the situation and reporting it to people from what we're seeing in the public. It's like, they get I don't even get time off like that, and we're just monitoring the situation. If I was in charge of it and actually making decisions in the situation, I would be there all the time. I wouldn't be doing anything outside of that. I'm not sure how it became normal for any presidents out there to go hang out at the golf course and stuff like that and go hang out at these sports events. I don't know how it became possible for all the presidents to be doing that. It's like they take a huge salary. I think the current president might be rejecting the salary, possibly, I think. But, he can still take it if he wanted to take the salary. So, they're getting almost what is it? I think it's $500,000 a year, or $400,000 or something like that to be the president. It's like, you can at least be at the job. It's like, people that are making a fraction of that don't even have the option just to take off whenever they want.
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely ridiculous. And also on top of that, folks, here's the other thing. Like, and I find it interesting, folks, how people act like elected officials are only held up to the standard of like the lowest denominator in the United States. So if you want to cuss people out, you can, and if you want to take a million vacations, you can, and if you want to slack on your job, you can. These people are running a country that is the office of the president is charged with the responsibility of the nation, of the republic, of 360 million people and 1.3 million active serving in uniform, with hundreds of thousands more in reserve. There are lives on the line and people's futures at stake with every hour of every day that a president is in the office of the president. And that is something that I think a lot of people miss the gravity of, is that symbolically you should always be showing that that is first and foremost on your mind. Because let me put it this way, we just saw that the talks collapsed on a war that 13 citizens have laid down their lives in the service of this republic to fight. I don't like the look of that, because that looks like the whole thing of, oh, while all of basically the poor and nameless are dying in this conflict, the common citizen, everyone else just gets to go around and have a party and act like it's not really happening, which is absolutely stupid. But anyways, with that, we have some breaking news coming out at this moment. So Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so I've just gotten here. It looks like a picture was posted on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. It looks like we have a picture here of a B-52 sitting on the apron. They say this picture came from yesterday, maybe yesterday evening, it looks like. It's carrying a full load of 2,000-pound guided bombs. So it looks like they had this thing ready to go as of yesterday evening, and they're probably going to be sending this thing out probably today, I'd imagine. So that's what we're seeing right now on the tarmac. So I mean, it's sort of back to the idea we saw earlier of this major airlift taking place from Europe to the Middle East. This is probably another aspect of it that's being prepped and ready to go from the looks of it.
Yeah, it does look like it's certainly a B-52 that's getting ready to go, but where is this again? The United Kingdom?
I think it could be. I'm not really sure of the location of this base here. I think it might be the UK.
Interesting. We'll have to try and see if we can find out where. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a super chat from Music Uploader who put in a 20. And thank you very much, Music Uploader, for that support as well. They said, honestly, it doesn't seem like we have a solid plan to take control of the Strait of Hormuz without sacrificing a good deal of equipment and, more importantly, servicemen and women. And let's pack our shit and move to Tasmania, LOL, LSA.
And I thank you for the support, and I wish that was an option, but sadly it isn't. We have to make most any action at this point, sadly, regardless of losses, to be able to try and reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which is why I was specifically, speaking for myself, was putting a lot of emphasis on making sure the Strait of Hormuz was dealt with at the first point of the war, 6 weeks almost at this point ago. Is because by fumbling a war plan like that, we're costing a lot of lives later. And maybe some people who've watched the channel for a while, who've never really understood why I always talk about we have to put so much importance on getting things right now on what we're dealing with today for the bigger picture tomorrow, is that a mistake 6 weeks ago can cost us lives 8 weeks later, if you all understand what I'm saying. Because if we had dealt with the Strait of Hormuz from the get-go and from the start, we would be seeing that this situation wouldn't be happening right now, to where we're having to look at a situation to where significant equipment and lives could be lost, having to fix the blunder we've made. And so I do thank you for the support, Music Uploader, and I wish that that was a case that we could largely just kind of gloss over this, but sadly at this point, because of the mistakes made prior, now we have to see that soldiers of this republic will have to pay, most likely with their own blood and lives, to see that this mistake is now rectified and corrected. Which is why I always put a heavy pertinence and importance on making sure to get it right, instead of just bumbling in and half-assing it, because people's lives will be lost because of those incompetencies. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running, and I hope that does address that well. And long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never truly die. And with that, we're on to the next one.
I also have a 20 from Game Theory, and thank you, Game Theory, as well, for that $20 support. They said, can you give some sort of analysis on what the recession would look like because of the energy shortage? And
Generally,
also, by the way, sorry for pausing there for a second. I heard a noise outside, and I think it was somebody doing something stupid on a motorcycle or something out there. But I was going to add in my opinion on this. I think it's really hard to say because I'm not an economist, but from what I've heard people saying that are experts that allegedly know what they're talking about on this, we'll probably be looking at layoffs here in the United States. We're already seeing layoffs because of artificial intelligence taking a lot of entry-level jobs. Those will likely accelerate as companies start hurting financially because the companies would rather let people go than accept a bit of a bottom line loss. They would rather let people go. So you'll probably see the layoffs start to ramp up. That'll probably be part of it. Also, you'll probably see retirement accounts, which are obviously connected to the U.S. stock market. They'll probably have a pretty big hit that they take to them, would be my guess. We're probably seeing that right now as well. That'll probably be another aspect of it. And of course, you got the petroleum prices and gasoline and things like that going higher and higher and higher. And the longer the Strait of Hormuz stays closed, the higher the crude oil prices are going to go, which is going to make the diesel and other gasoline prices go up. And as those prices go up, you're going to see pretty much all goods that are in grocery stores, their prices are going to go up because to transport those goods to the store, you have to use diesel fuel for semi trucks. So that's going to be passed on to the consumer. So it's going to have a ripple effect through everything. And it's not going to affect just the United States. It's going to be everybody, including the enemies of the United States. They're going to get hit by it as well, as I would say. But Enforcer, what say you?
and Matthew is generally correct on all that. It would just like generally a recession would look like mass layoffs because they're trying to make sure that their bottom line in these companies remains at least steady instead of dropping, if they're able to do that. And you'll also see that most everything rises in cost a good bit. You'll also see that gas might just not be available for consumer use, and so there might be shortages and lines at the gas stations waiting to get their rationed gas. Or you could see that if the gas is available nationwide, somehow the price is still going to be exorbitantly high, most likely. So that's generally what it would look like. And also you could expect that airfares for airlines are going to become a lot more expensive. Flights are going to be significantly reduced in volume and frequency because there just won't be enough fuel available to conduct the kind of flights that we're conducting right now. So a lot of travel would get cut down a great deal. And if you somehow are able to, it would be extremely expensive. And generally it'll look, the best way I could describe it is a slowing down of the economy is one way that it would look like. And then the second way it would look like is almost like inflation came back with a vengeance, but it wouldn't be inflation, at least in the relative sense of the US dollar is becoming less valuable. It would be inflation relative to the skyrocketing price compared to the generally stable value of the dollar at this point. So that would be about the best way I could explain it in its simplest form, but largely generally what Matthew said. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to tell y'all, folks, it's something else whenever I think about it, because we try and explain this the best we can, and we're explaining it the best we can based off of people that we've heard that know a little bit more about these types of things economically that have also spoken about it. And what's crazy, folks, is that there's some people who never realize how something works until it happens, and they always deny it until it happens. And then what's crazy, folks, is that once it happens and they're getting screwed the exact way we described it, then these people will say that no one would have seen it coming when everyone saw it coming. It's really interesting to me, folks, like the tragedy of ignorance, really. But anyways, with that, I hope that has addressed that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Next Nothing, and thank you very much for that $20 support. They said, thank you, gentlemen, for not having ads and providing new and information that I often don't get from anywhere else in LSA.
And thank you so much, NXT Nothing, for enjoying our news and also enjoying that's ad-free and sponsor-free. We always try and make sure that we prioritize reputation over income, because a lot of people out there try and maximize profits on channels and such. But the thing is that we are not a channel that has a board of directors or shareholders. It's just Matthew and me running it, and so we do not always have to prioritize profits over everything. And I think that generally proves a lot more in quality than it does in revenue, because revenue isn't everything. And I got to thank you incredibly for that support and helping this channel to keep running, so we can keep running this thing the way we do, about as upright as we can, given the way everything works in the world. And so a huge thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from John Olmaz, and thank you very much for that $20 support. They said, enjoy a few more Costco chickens. Y'all do a lot more than what we see during the stream, and that's got to take so much time every day. And thank you very much, by the way. It does take a lot of time. Like throughout the day, it is a nonstop thing of like trying to compile news throughout the day. Andrew collects it obviously and does all the pre-stream preparations like a few hours before the stream starts. But throughout the day, I'm going through like nonstop on sources, trying to find stuff left and right. Then he compiles it, and then of course we're making our own posts throughout the day. We're also doing things on Patreon sometimes, and also putting out the short videos and the live streams as well. So it's a lot of work. And also we stream until every night until almost midnight, so that eats into usual sleep time for most people, but everybody else is up with us, by the way. Everybody that's watching right now, they're also up with us. So it's a lot of work, but also at the same time though, it doesn't really feel like work because we enjoy it at the same time. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say there is a lot of work that goes on into this on air and off air. Matthew generally has like the best way to describe it for both of us, because we both work a lot on this channel. But Matthew has like a kind of like it's a lower intensity work schedule over a very long period of time over the day. My work schedule is a little bit shorter, but it's a lot more high intensity. Like I have to sit down with no music, no nothing, and just sit here at the computer for about 2 to 3 hours before the show goes live, working on everything to get the show running. And then the show runs, and then afterwards, I try and tend to a couple of other things off of the air that deal with the YouTube side of things, and also Patreon and whatnot, whenever that can, be gotten around to. But generally, we put a lot of work into this thing in different ways. Like Matthew is like basically going through most of the day every day, except for when he's asleep, and then I'm doing it way late at night, like at 3 in the morning and stuff like that, skimming and making sure that we have stuff on Twitter to talk about and cover as it's happening, so we have a sequence of events on our feed on Twitter, so that way then I can go through and gather it all, put it on the map, show where it happened, and then also build it into an actual story frame. And then I have to think before the show how that story frame works, how to all interconnect that, how to make a bigger picture out of that, and then analyze it and then speak about it, and all that sort of stuff as well. So it's actually quite a lot of work that we both put in different ways, and generally different forms to make this thing possible every day. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of work that both of us do off air every day to make this thing possible and to keep this news running.
Yeah, and also like even when I'm out, like like I go get my exercise pretty much every day when I can. Like I usually go like mountain biking or hiking or running or something to get probably about an hour or two of exercise daily. Like I'll mountain bike to the top of a hill or like a mountain or something like that. I'll stop, put the kickstand down, I'll start jumping on there, start working my sources, like out there on the trail and stuff like that, wherever I have signal, of course. But I'll do that even while I'm out doing something. I'll be doing that because you really can't afford to like take a minute off, because if you do that, you might miss something. And also we have to keep the timeline in our head, like, in sequence throughout the day, because when we get on here and talk about it, it really does no good if we don't know the timeline, the sequence that these events happen. It does no good at that point unless we can convey that to the audience. So it's throughout the day. It's gotten pretty wild. And also these days, I mean, we've gotten all kinds of like Twitter attention, YouTube attention, and stuff like that. So we have people reaching out all the time too, these days for the most part. So that's also a full-time job in itself on that end.
Yeah, also someone said, well, when in the world do y'all get time to hike? I'll tell you how that actually worked for me on Thursday, because that's when I went up to the lower falls at Bell Canyon, is that I woke up in the morning, like kind of a little bit later on, because this, like, I got to drink so much caffeine, folks, to run this show right now. And also it's kind of mentally exhausting enough that I have to actually get like 8 hours of sleep after the show every day to like function normally. So then I get up after my 8 hours of sleep and all, and staying up for hours after the show is over because I just can't sleep because there's so much caffeine in me. And then I got up and I made the video, and the video takes about 3 hours to make. So a video these days in production time is about the length of pre-prep that I do for the stream, but it just doesn't include running the stream live. It's just, doing the prep, recording, and then uploading the video. So then I spent 3 hours making that video, and once I got done with that, I think it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon here local time at that point, and I went, I'm going to Bell's Canyon. And right after I got done uploading that, like 10 minutes later, I was in the car driving out to Bell Canyon to go and try and get up to the lower falls. And then I went and spent literally all of my free time that day, basically, climbing up to the lower falls and then climbing back down, and then drove back just in time to get back to my place to be able to start working on the news. And then I collected all the news, did all the pre-show prep and all that, thumbnail, title, and whatnot. And then we went live on air, and then we ran like a 4-hour show, and then we got off of air. And then I spent a little bit of time working on stuff in the background a little bit. And then I was specifically responding to Patreon messages that night. And then after that, then I sat there for about an hour or two, just kind of goofing off on the computer and just waiting to get tired. And then I went to sleep. And then the next day kind of repeats. Same thing for both of us, basically, with how our schedules work. And that's how the time's fitting. And there's not a lot of it, because some days you just can't do that. Like you can't find the time to go do something like that. So I mean, you know, it's a full-time job. Like, it's more than a full-time job. It's probably like 2 full-time jobs put together in terms of the hours that we both work. But the thing about that is, though, is that I like the work that we do, like Matthew and me do. For the both of us, we both enjoy what we do in different aspects and how we contribute to it. But also the other thing is that I have a great deal of passion for it, because, you know, in the bigger picture, like, to be ideologically driven to do this, I think that it provides a great service to the public of the United States, however many are watching, to try and make sure that we're giving the highest quality news and the best analysis that we can, to try and give people the best picture possible and the most informed position to work from of what's actually happening in the world, instead of just listening to slop from like Fox or CNN or something. And that very much motivates me, even when I get like kind of tired and burnt out feeling, to keep going, because I know that hundreds of thousands of people are counting on us every day to get this news out. So that's kind of the 2 things that keeps me going to do this. But a humongous thanks to you for that incredible support and helping this channel to keep running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from Daniel P. Gunn, and thank you, Daniel, as well, for that 20 once again. He said, as both a civics teacher and speech and debate coach for many years, I'm thoroughly impressed by the great depth of knowledge in civics and history and being objective. And have either of you considered becoming a professor? Oh, Lord, I don't know. Like, I mean, I won't rule anything out. Like, I mean, maybe one day. I think to be a professor, though, you gotta have like a PhD. I think that's like a minimum requirement to be a professor, at least at like a big university or something like that. So I don't know, like, and also these days it seems like, people our age really don't want to go in and really learn that much. They're just basically going through the motions to get the degree for the most part. So me personally, I'm not sure. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say a lot of people have always told me you ought to become a history professor, because a lot of people are always like, damn, he's just like, he's got that photographic memory. Like, honestly, for me to get my bachelor's degree in history, it was very easy for me. I just like basically regurgitated everything from memory for the most part, most of the classes. But the ones that I actually learned stuff in, those are the classes I actually remembered, because I was very fascinated by them, because it was actually new stuff. But outside of that, I actually don't think I would want to become a professor, because, to be entirely honest, I really love what we do. I mean, I absolutely love what we do on this channel. It's a job that I never thought I would have. Like, it was a dream job, but it was such a dream that throughout my entire life, I was like, there's no way in hell that I could ever make a living out of sitting down and talking about the stuff I like to talk about, because it's niche. And also everyone, well, not really niche, but it's too nerdy. And everyone that I knew growing up, like literally everybody, you can name them, they were all like, listen, you got to stop being like a geek and an idiot and like, on the spectrum, because you're not going to be able to get a job doing that, and it makes no money. And so I just was like beat into thinking, yeah, you got to go do some job like becoming an attorney or something to make a living, because you can't make a living being, some stupid, know-it-all geek like me. And so then this happened, and I was like, there's no way in hell. It's like, this was literally what I would have wanted to do in my dreams. So I'd honestly, a professor would be cool, but I really love this job so much, I wouldn't really give it up for much of anything. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also a 20 from Mario Speedrun, and thank you very much, Mario, for that 20. He said, thank you for always bringing the most concise news. Yours essential, and may the world find peace, such that the most pertinent news this show can deliver is Romanian army changed the fabric of their shoes.
And I gotta say, a humongous thanks to you so much for the support. And hopefully one day we would be able to see that the world would find peace. But unfortunately for folks like us, we'll probably never be out of business as far as covering war news, because there is always a war going on somewhere. And it's been like that throughout the entirety of history. And so we'll probably be in this business for an incredibly long time, unfortunately. But hopefully we'll be able to see that at some point there's at least some relative peace for some years. But I do thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from Star, who said, I make a lot of jokes about but the coverage you two put out is very refreshing. And you two and I would probably disagree about domestic policies, but your nonpartisan coverage is what really matters, and your commitment is refreshing. And also, thank you, by the way. We really don't care. Like, if people like are, liberal, Republican, whatever you are, it's like I could really care less, to be honest. It's not my business. I mean, people can be whatever they want. It's a free country. I'm not telling people you should be one way or the other. Obviously, as an American, I have my own views on that, but we're presenting the news. And if we say criticism and criticizing the current, whoever's in office currently, we did it during the last one, we did it during this one, and that's not going to change. I mean, if there's something that's objectively not good for the country and it has to do with analysis of the war, we're going to say it. And if that happens to anger, some of the extremists out there, we'll just have to take that blow on the chin and just keep going. But we try to keep it as objective as possible. But recently there's been a lot of blunders, and that's why there's been a lot of criticism. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I would say a big thanks to your support, and I'd have to say that I agree as well. We're here to provide the news the best we can, but at the same time, a lot of people have an issue, and I even see someone in the live chat right now who always has an issue with criticism. Because, what's crazy, folks, this is going to sound kind of a little bit bizarre to some people who keep on coming into the chat and saying TDS and whatnot these days, but back in the day, we were actually being threatened to be killed by a whole bunch of far left liberal people because we were criticizing the last president, that we were far right MAGA and everything, and therefore we deserved to die and a whole bunch of other stuff. And we went through that for years. Basically, the whole time that the last guy was president, we were dealing with that. And the thing that a lot of people don't get, because a lot of people are very two-dimensional in their thinking these days, is that we criticize everybody because there's a lot to criticize with all of them. There was a lot to criticize with the last president, and we criticized the hell out of it. And there was a lot to criticize with the current president, and we criticized the hell out of it. Because I love the country so dearly that when I see someone doing something that I don't think is in the best interest of the country, I don't care what political party they're from, I'm gonna tell y'all in the most objective way I can, that's not a good thing for this country, and here's why. That's because I care for the country. If I didn't care for the country and I didn't care for anyone in it, I would tell y'all that everyone who's in charge is doing great and they're doing fine and nothing they're ever doing could ever be wrong. That's generally what I would say if I didn't care. Now, I care, and you can tell that I care a great deal, because whenever I talk about why things are wrong, and here's why, I always say it's wrong because it's going to hurt Americans, or it's going to get them killed in one way or another. And I got to say, I thank you incredibly for the support, and I welcome anyone here of any political background. We just, don't want people getting into fights in the chat. But at the same time, folks, people have got to understand that when we say something, we're not saying it because we're clearly a Democrat that hates Republicans, or we're clearly a Republican who hates Democrats. They do stuff all the time that's just stupid, to the point it doesn't make any sense if you look at it through an objective lens. Like I said here tonight, which, crazy enough, this has been the most controversial political take, which clearly shows that I have TDS according to some people, is me saying that I don't like all of the presidents from George Bush onwards to the current guy being on the golf course so much that they basically look like they live on it. And for some reason, saying that as a blanket statement on Republicans and Democrats over the past 26 years has brought people out of the woodworks tonight to say that I'm wildly political and clearly hate the current president and have TDS and everything, because I said that all of the presidents since Bush from 2000 on have been at the golf course basically every day of the week rather than the White House, and I don't like that. And I don't even know how in the hell people can be so tone deaf to something that's that clearly said, that somehow they interpret that to be, instead of Bush, Obama, Biden, and Trump, it's just Trump. You've literally got to be seeking a problem out to get he's clearly political out of a statement like that.
Yeah, and it's because everybody's like turned the president position into like a cult of personality. It's like, do people not understand? That's the when you start developing a cult of personality around a position like that. And by the way, the technical definition of the office of the presidency is being a public servant. And that's what that position actually is. If you take it down to the very bare bones essentials of what being the president is, it's a public servant, and they're elected to represent the people of the country, the majority that elected that president. That's what they're there for. They're not there to be worshiped. They're not there to be revered. And also, they get respect if they deserve it. I mean, this is a democracy. This isn't North Korea where if you say something that possibly disrespects the guy in charge, that you get, you put in the square and you get executed. It doesn't work like that. That's not the way this country is. As somebody said, I can't remember exactly who said it, but the most patriotic thing to do in a democracy is to question and criticize the government. That is the most patriotic thing you can do. The moment you stop doing that is the moment you start developing a cult of personality, and they can do no wrong. And at that point, I'm not sure what we're living at that point. If people start turning them into gods, they're not. These people are humans like anybody else. They're people. They can make mistakes, and they can also have successes too. It comes with the territory. And if the person in charge can't handle that, and they can't handle criticism, then maybe they're not cut out for the job.
Exactly. I like, and here's something that's crazy to me, folks. Like, I sit there and say, an elected official, like, and this was a statement that people have had an issue with tonight. An elected official shouldn't look like they're having fun, because they're there to serve the interest of the citizenry. And if they're out having more fun than what looks like having more fun than they are working for the country, that seems to be going against the best interest of the citizenry, and it's kind of spitting in their face. No one, I don't care how many people come in here and say that I'm far right MAGA because I said that about Biden, or how many people say I have TDS because I'm saying it about the current guy. I'm going to stick by that till the end of my days. And I saw someone come in here and say something like this, like it was a threat. Oh, yeah, well, if you think it's that easy, why don't you get up there and run for president? Maybe I will. Maybe I'll show you all what a real president and presidential behavior actually looks like showing the public that you're there for them all the time, because an elected official doesn't get to have fun. You're putting yourself into that position. You volunteered to run for an elected position, the president of the United States, of your own volition and free will, and the position comes with significant sacrifice. Personal sacrifice. You sacrifice yourself, your life, and your free time for the benefit of the citizenry of the Republic. And that is your job every day, is to be there for them and to show that you care for them with every last minute and every dying breath that you have as the President of the Republic. That's my opinion of what a president is. And if I became a president, I might take a vacation once a week every year, but you're not going to see me at the golf course 5 days out of the week of every year, because I think that is not really a good look, and it doesn't really look like the president cares that much about the citizens. Instead of going to a sports event, why don't we go around the country and check on the forestry services offices and speak to the forestry service? Or why don't we go around and talk to some of the firefighters in some of the different states and see about how their work is going and how they're improving firefighting in this country? Or how about we go around to the police departments and make sure that they're enforcing the law with an even hand and making sure to respect the citizenry's rights, but also maintaining public order? Why don't we go and talk to the state governors on trying to improve their economic lot? Why don't we spend our time doing that and talking to the common people of this country, the citizens themselves that vote at the ballot boxes every 4 years for who is the president? That's how a president should be spending the quote-unquote free time. It's a job of sacrifice, not one of self-indulgence. And I got to tell you, I'm sick and tired of seeing that over the past 20-something years, and everyone acting like they're owed it. You know what they were owed? Your vote. And you know what they owe you in return? Their service and sacrifice, period. That's what it is. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We got a Truth Social post.
Oh, we do?
Let's see here. Yep, we have it. It looks like he's posted a link to something. So here's what it says. It says, this was tweeted out, truthed out. I'm not sure what the verb is that they use on this Truth Social thing. I think it's called truthing or something. But the president put out, he said, the Trump card the president holds of Iran won't bend, a naval blockade. And it links to a news article here on a different site. And it's going through details about possibly blockading Iran. Let me skim this real quick, and I'll tell you what it says. I got to try to skim this article that he linked to, and I'll get back to you in just a second.
All right. And so in the meantime, we're going to be seeing we can get some further information, folks, about what's going to be coming out here in a minute, because apparently a Truth Social has finally been put out, and it appears to be the first statement from the president that we may be able to tell so far, might be giving us an idea of what's coming next. So hopefully we'll be able to get some further information on that here in a moment, but that'll take Matthew perusing over it and making sure to get a good gist of what it is. So what do we got?
Okay, so I'm take this with a grain of salt because I skimmed the article. I haven't had a chance to read it in detail. If you want to read the article directly, to get it directly from the source, you can go check out the president's Truth Social post. He has the link there for it. But here's a couple of snippets out of the article that he linked to. He said, it says, in short, Trump could simply out-blockade Iran's hold over the Strait of Hormuz, experts said. It said if Iran refuses to accept the final deal the U.S. offered Saturday, which is today, then Trump could bomb Tehran back into the Stone Ages as he vowed, or he might just reprise his successful blockade strategy to choke an already teetering Iranian economy and ratchet up the diplomatic pressure on China and India by cutting them off one of their key sources of oil. So essentially, it sounds like he's proposing possibly a blockade against China, which would be a direct act of war against China, actually, if that's what he's actually thinking about right there. So that seems to be what the article is suggesting, unless I'm misinterpreting something out of the article. And it goes through a whole bunch of stuff. Also, by the way, this article seems to have a very strong favoritism, like the way this is written, by the way. This seems to be a very favorable article, just on a side note. But that appears to be what it's saying, but if someone can, read it and read it in depth, maybe I'm misinterpreting something, but that sounds like it.
Interesting. Well, I'll have to try and read that, folks, and see what I get out of it, because I think that might be suggesting a counter blockade to Iran's blockade, so blockading the Iranian blockade. I think that's what I was interpreting it mean, but it might mean what you're meaning as well. I'm not really sure. But it sounds like, folks, things are only going to be getting more interesting. So with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is going to go to Ross Nibb, who puts in a 50, and thank you very much, Ross, for that $50 support. He said, from one history nerd to another, here's to following your dreams and LLT LSA.
And long live the Lee Spring Army. And I got to say, it's really crazy to know that this actually did turn into a job. It's an insanity, folks. It's crazy because there were statements made to me before I ever did this. And there were statements made to me while I was doing this by some people that I always will remember. Like, there was a person out there, folks, I'm not going to say who they were, that told me that no matter what, I was going to be a bum by even doing this after it ended up taking off. And I think about that from time to time, and I was like, that didn't really pan out all too well. And it's now turned into a pretty big thing. I'm pretty proud of it myself. And I gotta say, following your dreams never hurts, folks. Never do what someone else wants you to do, because they don't know what the hell you want. And they aren't really caring about what you want for what's best for you. They want what's best for them because of their own ego or image. Always do what you think is going to be best for yourself. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And thank you so much once again for saying that it's a good thing that the dreams came true, because I think so as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, I got some more details out of that article, by the way. I'm just going to read off a section of it here that appears to go into detail about what this plan of a blockade could mean. It looks like essentially what they're proposing in this article is a double blockade, because we're already seeing that Iran's blockading the strait by basically cutting off the choke point in the Strait of Hormuz. And now it appears to be that this article suggests that there could be a secondary blockade at the very exit of the Gulf itself that the U.S. Navy could impose. It says it would be very easy for the U.S. Navy to exert complete control over what does and does not go up and down the strait now, says an expert at one of these institutions that the article is citing. It says, I've heard about 10 ships have moved in the last 24 hours. One of them was a reflagged Russian tanker, and we know that cargoes have gone out to China, to India, and we've seen some inbound traffic. And if Iran gets intransient, then absolutely the U.S. Navy can set up with great overwater surveillance and watch everything that goes in and out of that strait. And you'll have to ask the U.S. Navy if you want to move past Kharg Island or past that narrow part by Oman. But here's the problem, though. This expert right here that's saying this, I mean, how do you enforce something like that? What are we going to do? Get into a shooting war with Chinese ships trying to stop and enforce a blockade? It's like if China shows up and they say, hey, let our ship through, if you're going to enforce that blockade, you're going to get into a war with China trying to do something like that. So, I mean, I'm not sure if this expert here is really thinking this through all the way that's being cited right here in his article. To enforce something like that, you are literally taking us to the brink of war with China to do something like that.
Oh, they would be taking us to the brink of war with China because you would have to physically board and seize a Chinese vessel to stop them from entering, which is an act of war. I mean, that is an act of war against any vessel that is flagged out of China. So, it's like, are we willing to basically create an act of war in every single incident of a ship that we're stopping to try and create a blockade? It's like, that doesn't sound like a smart idea. That sounds pretty stupid to me. It sounds like, folks, you just gotta bomb the strait open. Like, is it that hard? Could it be that it can't be that hard? I just gotta say that it can't be that damn hard. Like, they're acting like that's impossible. They haven't even tried. Like, if they tried and then it somehow wasn't open, then we would be like, okay, that is actually impossible. But they haven't even tried to militarily force open the strait. So how the hell do we know that that's not possible yet? This is just like, I don't know what it is with the current foreign policy initiatives, but it's basically like whatever is destructive to our enemy becomes equally destructive to ourselves, because the blockade that the Iranians are doing is going to screw us over. So our counterattack to that is going to be to screw ourselves over, but also bring them down with us too, instead of just forcibly opening the strait to where we don't go down with them, but they go down on their own.
Yeah. Also, I see someone in the chat said, what about just mining the mouth of the strait itself down there at the exit of the Gulf? You could do something like that, but here's the catch, though. Let's say a Chinese vessel, is exiting the Strait of Hormuz and going out of the Gulf of Oman, and it hits a mine, and it turns out that they find out it was a U.S. mine that they hit, which it would be hard to deny that, because who else is mining the strait except for the United States? They literally are right there at the exit of it, so it would clearly be probably assumed to be the United States, and they'd probably figure that out. Then China's going to say, hey, wait a minute. United States forces, did you just blow up our ship? And the U.S. is going, what is the U.S. going to do? Deny it? It's like they're going to probably admit, well, yeah, we actually did, but it was an accident, though, because you shouldn't hit our mine. And China's going to say, oh, really? Is that right? And then you're in a situation that's pretty gnarly at that point. So I don't know. I don't know. But if you have to pick between the bad options here of the blockade they're talking about, or potentially invading Karg Island and having casualties, we might be better off invading Karg Island and having casualties at that point, because the casualties from a war with China is going to be way larger than anything would be on Karg Island.
Yeah. I gotta tell you, folks, if that's what the idea from the president is, I can tell you all this. We're in for a very tough time here economically on the home front, so y'all better just start saving up as much money as you can right now if you have the ability to, because with this kind of idiotic planning, things are only going to be getting worse. So TDS, you can say that all you want, but that's the facts, so, live with it. But anyways, with that, we're on the next one.
And our next super chat is going to go to Groundzer, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Groundzer, for that support. He said, oh, wow, a naval blockade. Watch out, people. We'll be rewinding time in our DeLorean to a time before manned flight when coal-powered freight and leaf springs ruled the suspension world.
I'll tell you, we might. we just might. But a big thanks to your support, and I got to say, I gotta say, folks, I gotta give a shout out to the current office of the president. Somehow they are the absolute best. I mean, truly are the best compared to any other administration in U.S. history at somehow picking the worst foreign policy approaches that you could ever imagine in history. Like, I have never seen, like, it's like you would eventually think that they dig themselves deep enough that they'd be like, okay, well, this path of stupid thinking isn't working. Maybe we need to take a different approach. No, they just keep with it. Like, they're predictably unpredictable in terms of picking the worst possible option. Like, if that's the one that's seriously being considered right now in that article, which I'd have to be honest with y'all, I don't even think it is, because that would be so asinine and stupid. It would be unbelievable if they actually follow through with that. It's just unbelievable, though, that stuff like that's said, because it's like, if the Strait of Hormuz being closed is hurting us badly, which the U.S. government basically admits at this point, how the hell is it going to benefit us to blockade the blockade? Because then we're just ensuring that we're not seeing the Strait of Hormuz open. Because if if they open their blockade and they end it, then we have to end ours, which then takes even further time. It's like this stuff is just stupid at this point. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on the next one.
All right. And also, let's see here. I was going to say something about this right here. I was going to go grab something real quick. But I'll have to think about it. It slipped my mind just then. It totally left, kind of like common sense. But this one goes to Hank Hill, who puts it in a 10. And thank you very much, Hank, for that 10. He said, I don't always agree with you, but the grind is outstanding.
And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to say that I thank you so much for appreciating our grind. And people don't always have to agree with us. They don't always have to, but they also don't have to cuss us out if they disagree with us, which is one thing that a lot of people seem to misunderstand there. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep running. I hope that I addressed that well. And man, someone just said, random YouTuber thinks billionaire times 2 president with pro advisors is doing it wrong. Yeah, I do think they're doing it wrong. And you know what's kind of funny is that that guy was never a politician before he was elected the first time, and he was saying that everybody up there was doing everything wrong. And what the hell did he know at that point? He was just some dude who was in real estate and like golf courses and shit. How in the world do you know what everyone in the government was doing wrong? Why would you believe that he was right? Like, I'm not getting political here, but this, like, people always acting like because you're not the president, your opinion means nothing is really stupid. Because at one point, the president wasn't the president, and he just had a whole bunch of opinions. And apparently a lot of people believed that he was saying something right. So, you know, kind of a stupid take, honestly.
It's wild to me. And I will admit I'm only 25 years old, but I've learned at 25 years old that, when it comes to things like in a large sense, like geopolitics and making decisions on such a massive scale like that, the truth is nobody really knows what they're doing. Nobody does. Because you'll notice I just mentioned that they're citing an expert in that article that I just read off right there. And the expert is suggesting something which has a very obvious flaw to it. And that's a supposed expert saying that. Just because you're a billionaire or just because you have like a PhD in like political science does not make you the end all authority on something. People like that can still get stuff wrong, and they get it wrong all the time. All those degrees say is you spent a certain amount of time studying it, but that doesn't mean their judgment's any good. Their judgment might suck. All they've done is simply studied it, and they might not still understand it for the most part. So I mean that's a problem. Like it's like the expert like fallacy. Like just because someone's supposedly an expert or has a position of authority does not mean they have all the answers.
You know what's crazy? I just find this to be absolutely hilarious. Is there's this that sort of a statement right there is absolutely stupid. And I'm not delving into politics by saying this, but I have to say this because this points out how dumb of a statement it is. The people who are saying that right now were criticizing the last president and literally every breath the guy took, just because the guy is of a different political affiliation. Y'all weren't saying anything back then about the other dude, like, oh, well, he's the president, he has all of the information and all of the intelligence. No, some random Joe Blow like y'all who are saying this in the comment section right now was saying the last president was wrong on literally everything, and y'all were as uninformed then as y'all are now, but just because you like the current guy, you pretend like he knows everything under the sun and he can never be wrong. And the crazy thing is, folks, is that throughout all of U.S. history, for 250 years, every single president has had at least one blunder under their belt in some way. And so it's like, if it was true that the president could never do anything wrong and he had all the information, he only made the right decisions, why are there so many historical examples of all 47 presidents making major blunders at one point or another in their presidential terms if they knew everything and they could never be wrong? Those two things alone completely prove that those statements are utter bullshit. And that also completely throws out the democratic system that our country runs on, because at that point, why in the world is anyone voting for anyone? Because all the people voting, according to y'all, don't know what the hell they're talking about and don't have a clue, and the people who are running for those offices don't have a clue either. So why don't we just install a dictator at this point and dissolve the Congress and just let the know-it-all run everything, and then if you disagree with them, put you in a camp or something? Because that's basically what y'all are arguing for. It's dumb. It doesn't make any sense. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
Our next one goes to Grand Moff Clubby, who puts in a 10, and thank you very much, Grand Moff, for that support. They said, all these talks are pointless. Our administration is just wasting time. On other news, though, the Imperial Ruling Council has agreed to make me the representative to the LSA, LSA, and the Empire.
And long live the Lee Spring Army. And I gotta say, it really is a waste of time. It certainly proved out to be one. But a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. Oh, man, wait, hang on. I gotta get this one, Matthew, because this one is a real interesting one. Someone said, the last president left billions of dollars of equipment in Afghanistan. That's true, but how do you know that that wasn't the best decision to be made? I mean, you didn't have all the intelligence, did you? You have no clue whether that was a good idea or not, but you're saying that it's a mistake. What do you know? What if you had intelligence saying that it would cost $10 billion to get $5 billion of equipment out? How do you not know that that was the intelligence they had? So you're saying that and by that statement, you're even defeating your own logic, because you're saying that some things are so obviously wrong that they're wrong. So that clearly shows that someone who isn't the president can say that the president's wrong, which then defeats your current argument about the current guy and that he can't be wrong in anything and he knows everything, because the last guy apparently didn't, according to your own argument right there. You're literally defeating your own claim. It's like people don't seem to get that. Yeah. And I would agree with you. Like, that was a mistake, because it obviously is. A lot like there's obvious mistakes being made right now. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
Our next one is going to go to none other than Chris Kim FN. And thank you very much, Chris, for that $20 support. He said, we know that China is able to exert some level of pressure on Iran. China gets a majority of their oil from Iran. And if we blocked it as well, wouldn't it put extreme pressure on China to put pressure on Iran to open the strait?
Yeah, but that's very indirect, though, and there's no way to guarantee that Chinese pressure would make the Iranians relent, because the Chinese could put a lot of pressure on Iran, and then Iran just doesn't relent, and then we're still stuck to where we are right now, and really the most direct and straightforward answer would be to physically reopen the Strait of Hormuz. So a big thanks to you for supporting up with this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a super chat from Music Uploader yet again, who put in a 10, and thank you once again. They said that the IRGC don't trust each other, and when they seen how long the negotiations are going, they had to bring the other guys in to make sure that it goes their way in LSA.
Maybe. I mean, that probably might have been the case. They might have had a whole bunch of security guys showing up to make sure that the Iranian delegation was still staying on track, maybe. But still, a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Smarzig, who said, does it seem contradictory that the U.S. is fighting Russia and Iran, but they're working with Russia against Ukraine?
It is contradictory. The whole foreign policy prerogative at this point doesn't make any sense at all. Like, we've generally come to that conclusion, because it's like, we work against Iran, but then we're like kind of with China, and then we're extremely friendly with Russia, and it just makes no sense at this point. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a $10 support from none other than Inspector, who said that you have more people watching than a specific mainstream media show that's out there. And that's what's interesting to me. Like, I saw yesterday, also, by the way, the president absolutely roasted the hell out of some podcasters yesterday. Like, yeah. I'm sure people saw that. There was a True Social post out there roasting the hell out of some podcasters. On a side note, they actually used to support the guy. But he was he roasted like the absolute hell out of these people. Like, I was reading it. I usually don't find stuff like that funny because it's not very presidential. But at the same time, though, I will admit the roast was so brutal. It was almost hilarious. To a certain degree, but we actually outrank a lot of people that he was bashing. Like, when it comes to the views and stuff like that, we actually outrank them. So when people out there say, "Oh yeah, I got the news from this mainstream show," it's like, I mean, I guess they're better known as their faces on TV. Like, we don't show our face on the stream, so I guess people don't associate our face with the news, which is kind of the way we want it to be. Actually, we would rather focus on the news, but we actually outrank them, funnily enough. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, yeah, it's an interesting thing. We're usually, except for the Artemis mission, generally in the ratings these days on YouTube, I think we're in the top 20s, or usually in the top 20s or even higher than that, which is really something crazy, because back in the day, the channel started off with literally nobody watching. I think it was like 1 or 2 live viewers at the peak for the first 4 days that I was doing this daily. And now here in the future with the both of us, it's now up to, like tonight, 35,000 people were here at the peak, and it's really crazy to see that. And I also got to say, it is really something else to know that folks like you enjoy this channel a whole lot, to help us to stay on air with your support, so that way we continue to grow to be basically a news giant almost at this point. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on the next one.
Oh, let's see. Someone said there's more new posts. Let's see what else we got. We got something else. I'm anxiously looking forward to what this could be. Okay, he put something out. Let's see here. Okay, so the most recent one, he's posting a lot. Goodness, he's really posting a lot. It's midnight posting season right here. So he posted a thing about the naval blockade 47 minutes ago. Then he posted a post here about something. I'm not sure what that's about, but we'll move on from that one. Then he posted a thing saying, it also appears to be screenshotting someone else's post. It says, I wonder when Europe is going to take the president's sensible advice. And then it shows a video of him saying something. So I would assume he's saying something about NATO possibly right there. But we won't report on that necessarily. It sounds like the usual rhetoric. But if there's something breaking that he puts out here shortly, which it could be because it looks like he's on a post rampage right now. So we'll have to see. But moving on to our next one. This one goes to...
In the middle of it here in a minute, it's going to be, the enforcers are such losers. It's going to be like, oh, he hit the radar. It's going to be like, oh, man, like, that's going to be something. But go ahead.
And our next one goes to James Margolis, who puts in the 10. He said, no questions, but thank you for the hard work. I look forward to your shows. And sir.
And thank you so much for the support, James Margolis. And we thank you so much for enjoying the hard work and looking forward to the shows, because we like to make these things possible and keep them running. And so big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 10 from Always Reason, who said, let's see here. Sadly, I can't read this right here. This one makes a political statement, but we do appreciate support, Always Reason, and thank you very much for that 10 and keeping the channel running. We also have a 10 from Red Russell, who said, what do you think will happen in Hungary tomorrow? Is tomorrow the election?
I think tomorrow is the election. I'm not really sure what's going to be happening in Hungary tomorrow. I haven't really been looking at the polling data that's been coming out of Hungary on who's going to win. But I'm not going to say as an American who should win in Hungary. It's the Hungarians' right to choose. And generally, while our current government in the United States has made it incredibly clear who they want to win, I would personally say that that's an internal Hungarian matter. And as an American, I really don't have much of a say on it. But Matthew, what would you say about it?
I don't know. Like I've been meaning to check the polling data between those two guys right there. Now, obviously, I don't really weigh in very much on foreign political elections, because I think the country should mind their own business for the most part when it comes to things like that. Certainly shouldn't be campaigning for foreign politicians. That's a horrible idea. I think there was, the founding fathers warned against stuff like that, but it seems like we're not heeding their warnings anymore about things like that. But I'm hoping that somebody that's friendly to Europe is getting elected, not someone who's chummed up with Russia. I'll just simply leave it at that.
Yeah, I would say hopefully that'll be the case. Let's see here. One second. I'm trying to see something here really quickly, man, because I just saw something here. Let's see. One second. I need to go take a look at this. So it looks like at the moment, from the polling that came out from Politico, and I'm going to make my comments, folks, very moot on this, because I'll say that for foreign policy reasons, we haven't been a big fan of Orban, because he's more aligned with the Russians than anything from what we can tell on foreign policy. But outside of that, regardless of that, I don't really believe that the United States has a right, even us as just common American citizens, have a right to really weigh in on who we think should win in Hungary. Because if the Hungarian people want Orban, then they should have them. And I don't really think we should be trying to put any undue influence on them to try and vote another way due to repercussions or reprisals we might make outside of their democratic system. But it actually appears that according to Politico's polling, it looks like the TISA party, which is the one behind Peter Magyar, is at 50%, and the Fidesz party, which supports Viktor Orban, is at 39%, however reliable that poll may be. So it is showing that at the moment, the TISA party may actually be able to get some form of a majority within the Hungarian parliament, and through that majority, they will most likely be able to get Peter Magyar as the president of Hungary, if that polling is accurate. But nevertheless, I would say that the decision is up to the Hungarian people regardless, and regardless of the decision, I hope that they pick the leader that they will believe is the best for them and the best for the Republic of Hungary. But with that, I hope that does address that the best in my opinion, and a big thanks to you for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $50 support from Fred Vreeman, and thank you very much, Fred, for that 50, and we do appreciate it. He said, I encourage everyone to rewind and listen to the beginning of the stream, and honestly, the news today is completely insane. You can't make any sense of it at all, and thank you, enforcers, for sorting it out a little bit, and honestly, help us tomorrow.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, Fred, it's something else, and I thank you so much for enjoying our work. We tried our best to sort it out and really make a clear picture of everything that was happening, and I hope that it was as clear as it could be with all the fog that has come out over the day. But I have to say a big thanks to you for support and watching the beginning of the show, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running so we can keep news like this rolling. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, real quick, I see someone saying, "I'm glad it wasn't you guys that the president was bashing." It's hard. I'm not saying it's impossible. Like it's possible that maybe we might catch the radar. Like y'all would be surprised at who reaches out to us in the background. We keep all that information in confidence, by the way, because we're not. There's people that say, don't mention me on the air because of my privacy and stuff like that. But they want to say they like the show, so we keep all that stuff confidential. We don't say who reaches out behind the scenes and stuff like that. So if anyone ever does, you can rest assured we're not going to jump on the air and then be like, "Oh, guess who reached out today?" It's like, we're not going to do that. But it's possible that we might hit the radar. And if something like that happened, we just have to take it in stride at that point because it's whatever. I mean, my personal take is I don't think any president should be commenting and bashing private citizens that are his constituents. That seems like a bad form, to say the least. And it also seems not very, professional. Like, I'm not really sure how to describe it. It doesn't seem right to start doing stuff like that because, ultimately the president's presiding over the country and they shouldn't be bashing the people that they are presiding over if they're getting criticized. It seems like a strange thing to do. The president's no longer a private citizen. He's a public servant at that point. So to start bashing the constituents, a little bit strange.
Also, someone just said, consider for a moment that the commander-in-chief is a citizen. He is a citizen that holds significant governmental authority and power. So it's a very different dynamic. Like, policemen in this country are, citizens as well. But would you think, let me put it this way, folks. Let's put it at the level of a police officer, all right? So a police officer is a citizen like every other. Well, how would you like it if a police officer came up to you in your car and said, I don't like this certain group of people? Would you expect that they're now going to operate their duties of their position, given that information they just told you? Because they have a right to free speech, of course, like y'all are saying. Would y'all think that they're going to follow their duties according to the law or according to their bias at that point? And obviously you would start thinking that there's a questionability as to whether they're going to perform their duties properly, because now they're showing an inherent bias that may affect their abilities to conduct their duties according to the letter of the law. And that's why public officials, whether they be elected or appointed, don't really have the same expected rights, if you want to call them that, as a common citizen. Because, of course, the president has a First Amendment right to free speech, but considering the kind of authority and power that he holds, it doesn't really look that good when he exercises it, because that could come with the expected reprisals that his authority may allow him to conduct. Like, any variety of options for that matter. And that's why you generally don't let public officials and civil servants and such like that go out and generally act like they have a laissez-faire approach to saying whatever they want, because then that's going to start making you think maybe this guy is going to start working off of these biases and statements to a detriment, and that's not really a good thing. And I find that kind of crazy that folks say, well, I mean, he has the right to free speech. This is like, what if that turned against you one day and he said something particularly about, I don't like you, the person who's saying that right now? Would you say that that's fine then, or would you say that that's wrong that he's saying that because, he's the president, he could take some sort of reprisal or reciprocal action against people he doesn't like because he's made it clear? It's like, that's a boundary that generally you don't want presidents to cross, or really any public service for that matter to cross.
Thankfully, though, we're a lot harder to bash because we don't put our faces on the air, and it's harder to go after, like, for example, like what's a tweet going to say? Oh, those enforcer idiots. It's like, I mean, that sounds kind of childish, like when you put it that way. It's like you don't have like a proper name to associate with it because we don't use our proper names to brand the channel. We don't do that. If you look close enough, you'll find our real names out there somewhere, I'm sure, and also our pictures are with it and everything like that. If you look close enough, but we don't associate that with our brand like intentionally. So it's kind of harder to do that because it sounds really like kind of out there to be talking about those enforcers. Like most people aren't even going to know what that is for the most part. They're going to be like the enforcers. It's like, unless you watched our YouTube channel, it's like you're not going to know who that is. We're not like celebrities necessarily because, like I said, we don't associate our face with it.
Yeah, and also I see a couple of interesting comments. People saying words matter at that level, as far as what, and they do, like they really do. They matter at any level. I mean, at even the lowest level of a civil servant, like the average police officer that you'll run into out there on a patrol route or a beat somewhere, even they are held to a higher standard than the citizenry and can't just go around acting like all of their rights allow them to basically make it seem like they could abuse their position based off of their preferences or opinions. That's the statement I'm trying to make, and I think that's one that's pretty fair. Because if y'all came up to me, folks, as a public servant, I wouldn't sit there and say, I don't like you because you have blue hair or you look a little bit too country and rough hands for me. Like, I would sit there and say, well, you are a citizen, deserving of your right to free speech, and I respect that. Because now I'm in a position to uphold the right, not to use it. There's a difference. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Wantan quadruple 8. And thank you very much, Wantan, for that support. He said, super chatting from the throne. Oh, well then. He said, it's the best time. Clear mind. And don't ever feel bad admitting it. Now your wife making surprise press conferences. Not scary. LSA. All hell the orb.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of jokes to be made there, but we'll hold off on them. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support. And I gotta say, super chat from the throne there. That's interesting. And I gotta thank you so much for the support and praise the orb and long live the late spring army. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 10 from LJ Agitis, and thank you very much for that 10, by the way. They said, hello, enforcers. I made the many-hour drive to historic Wendover Airfield and sent pictures, some for a Matt rabbit hole, some for Andrew rabbit hole. Symbol Arts makes coins, not far from a Matt's bread stop.
Wendover?
Bread stop?
Oh, Matthew, look, it's the rest stop. That's what he meant. Out here.
Oh, yeah, I did stop there, and that's where I actually walked out there into the salt flats, yeah.
And look, here's the Wendover Airport and the historic Wendover Airfield Museum.
Oh, he means that. I know where.
Oh my God, it's an atomic bomb.
Holy.
Wow. I gotta be honest with you. Unfortunately, it's eluding me why this place is historically important.
It's an airfield.
But what did it do? I can't remember.
Launched planes.
But it had something to do with nuclear weaponry.
Oh wow! Look at this. They had a bomber bar right there. That's pretty cool. It's like an old style type.
Oh, so the crews of the Enola Gay and the Boxcar were trained here at this airfield. So it was a training field for heavy bombers. Now that's why that's historically significant. Okay, I'm sorry, everyone. I actually didn't know that. And I'm very sorry about that because usually I know a good bit about history. This has eluded me. But I got to thank you so much for the support, LG Jice. And I got to say, that is a really interesting place. Honestly, Matthew, why didn't you go and take some pictures of this since you were out there?
I didn't know this was here, and also when I went to Wendover, I just saw nothing but like casinos all over the place. So I was like, I turned around and headed back. And also, I was already exhausted because I just got done like moping through the salt flats because I went too far out and it was hot, and I didn't realize how far I had walked because you can't tell distance out there. There's no points of reference. So I just got done moping back to the car. So I wasn't ready to go to the airfield.
Oh, that's a tragedy. A real shame right there. A real shame. But that is really cool, honestly. And I thank you so much for the support and sharing this with us. Really cool, actually. And we'll have to take a better look at this sometime around in the future. And also, I would have to say, a big thanks to you so much once again for sharing that with us. Really something. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Wantan quadruple 8 yet again, who said from the porcelain throne once again. Oh, again. He said fixing a blockade by making a bigger blockade around it sounds like unclogging my toilet by finishing the job and dumping a bag of cement down it. Didn't hear no bell.
Dang. I got to tell you one time, that's one hell of a playthrough right there. And I got to thank you so much for the support and sharing that critical information with us. And so a huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Anthony K. So I found this channel from a comment on a Zero Hedge article. I got to say, I'm liking the unbiased content.
What's Zero Hedge?
I think our haters might have put out an article on, I'm not sure if it was on that platform, but it was a different one that sounded familiar to it. Believe it or not, folks, like back in the day, there's people that used to write hate articles about our channel and stuff like that, accusing us of being like of a political party and stuff like that. It was out there. I'm not sure if that's the one.
Oh man, it's so funny, folks, especially considering the current climate of how this channel is viewed. Because you can right now, I gotta say, folks, it's hilarious to me. Right now, basically everyone who comes in the chat that we have to ban, they're like, these guys hate the current president. TDS. You can go back and find articles from like 3 years ago where people were saying they hate Biden and Democrats. They're clearly MAGA. It's so funny, folks, because it's like, people just don't get it, but we're criticizing everyone equally and we get hate from everyone. I mean, hell, this isn't our first time around the block for people not to know. I mean, we used to get death threats from the other side, and now we get like death threats and a whole bunch of other things from this side. It's nothing new to us, and honestly, we've realized that political people are nothing but like barbaric animals almost in the way that they think. Like they think like in a group mindset, and they're very violent. And
Well,
honestly,
not all. Well, well, just because somebody's political doesn't make them a barbarian or something like that. But it's just the people that are very extreme. Like,
well, like the
those
cult
aren't really
worshipper
even.
types.
Yeah, they aren't really like political people. At that point, they start delving into a new category. It's like they start turning into extremists. If it wasn't politics, it would be something else. It would probably be religion if they weren't getting extreme on politics. They're just trying to find something to carry out their hatred. If it's anything they can latch onto, it's going to be something.
No, I mean, like, what I'm saying, like, and maybe I didn't clarify this because Matthew's almost like an attorney. Like, I'll be like, they're really political people. And he's like, well, not all of them. It's like, well, yeah, like, they're really political people. It's not like not just anyone who likes politics, just the really political ones. They generally get nuts. Like, they don't think reasonably. They think, like, in a very one-dimensional, like, tunnel vision kind of a mindset, and they go off on anything that is not saying that their side is perfect with no flaws. We dealt with it back then from one side. We deal with that now from another. It's nothing new, but I'll tell you this. I'll be straight up. It's worse now with this side than it was the last side, to be entirely honest. Like, the flood this time around is even greater than the last, which is really something else. But anyways, with that, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Game Theory, who said, personally, I think there's going to be a Great Depression 2.0 the way it's going. And how can businesses make plans with energy that can't be planned? Oh, they've already made their plans, by the way. I mean, that's why you see layoffs happening already. They've already forecasted whatever scenario they think's going to happen. And the fact they're laying people off tells me that they forecasted something that's not so great. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with that. And a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 6 from Carrie TV, who said, sorry I'm late to the vids for a while, but have you talked about the Ireland fuel strikes? The country is coming to a halt.
Sadly, we generally had so much other news to cover that's pretty low on the radar, so we haven't really covered that. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Robert Krogan. Excuse me. He said, good evening, Enforcers and LSA. Can you take one from the chat?
And of course we can take one from the chat, in your honor, Robert. Of course we can. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
And the one from the chat is going to go to none other than Avarig, who said, question for you both. Do you think Saudi Arabia will enter the war with Iran?
Eventually they might, but I'm not entirely sure on that. The jury's out for the moment, but I'm thinking that more likely than not. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does dress that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Ross Nibb. He said, the U.S. has so many great museums. I always wanted to go along for the open day at Edwards Air Force Base and the Trinity test sites.
And Edwards Air Force Base is a really interesting spot. I mean, look at that. Look at that thing. That thing right there. And look at this thing right here. And this one, this thing here as well. And I mean, just look at this thing and that one.
You know what these things do? You know what these things do?
What does that thing do?
The things go
man. I think you're not wrong. I think you might be right. Oh, yes, indeed. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I'll be here all week. But outside of that, that would be an interesting place to go. And one place I want to go, it's close to us, but we haven't gone yet, is the Hill Air Force Base Museum up here, which is on the northern. Well, that's the wrong one. The northern end of the gate, right here. I want to go to this museum because it looks like a really good one, and they have an F-22. And not a lot of museums have F-22s in them. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Frosty Rotor X, who said, this day in U.S. military history number 3, on April the 11th, 1945, the U.S. Third Army reaches the Buchenwald camp in Weimar, Germany, liberating 21,000 survivors.
And actually, that was a pretty wild one, because I think that was one of the first camps that the U.S. Army liberated, and the U.S. Army, the soldiers that liberated were so shocked by what they saw that in some cases, they actually would take the guards that were still there and they would execute them. Like it was chaos at Buchenwald for basically a whole day after they liberated it. Like the Jewish prisoners there were taking it upon themselves to beat the guards to death. The U.S. soldiers were executing them as well, and it was just absolute, like, it just went into chaos. It took, I believe, it took a general coming into the area with a whole other unit to try and restore order to the area, because it descended into chaos because the U.S. soldiers that arrived there were just so shocked at what they had witnessed, because it was beyond words, to be entirely honest with you, beyond the pictures that they even took of it that most of y'all would see in the public these days from what the eyewitnesses say. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I thank you for sharing that day in history. It was not really the greatest day in U.S. military history, a really tragic one, because of what they saw and witnessed that the Germans had been conducting in their atrocities throughout Europe. But I do thank you once again for sharing an important day of history with us nonetheless. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Jack. He said, let's see here. Oh man, he mentioned somebody that's a very hot topic for politicism. I'm trying to say. Let's see. I don't know if I can read this one, but thank you very much, Jack, for that 5. We do appreciate that. We also have a 5 from Ian Mitson. He said, what the tweakers worldwide and the Russians have in common? They both love cutting cables. Actually, the tweakers like stripping cables, actually. That's what the tweakers do. They strip that copper out of those cables. I've never seen anybody strip the copper out of the cables quite like a tweaker. But the Russians, they have a thing for cutting cables. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta tell you, Matthew's right with those nuances there a little, but I tell you, goodness gracious, they do like copper. And they do like wiring, I'll tell you that. But a big thanks to you for support, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Mateo, who said, thanks for the coverage.
And thank you so much for enjoying it and supporting it. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Mr. Lunchtime. He said, great work, my friends. Take a question from the chat. And Matt, oh man, I can't just jump into it like that. You gotta give me a warning. Stay toasted, my friends.
I thank you so much greatly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hit a pear on I-95 and I threw it in Central Park, and it sat around and it kind of just rotted there. It was really weird. But beyond that, I used to take mice and I used to shove them up the car exhaust so that way they clean it like a little flooper. But beyond that, I thank you so much for the support, and we will make sure to get a question from the live chat in your honor. So Matthew, what do we got?
A question from the live chat is going to go to Justin Green, who said, do you think the airspaces in Europe that are closed will hinder the resupply of U.S. forces in the Middle East?
Not exactly, because Britain and Germany are still largely open, and those are our main air corridors for the most part anyways. So a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, did you see that guy started a podcast? Like, it's a health podcast thing. It's like I think it might be from like whatever he's in charge of in the government.
You know, I actually did see that, and I thought that shit was kind of mental, because, you know, he's got some really crazy ideas, and it's like, I don't really think that's medically sound, to be entirely honest with you.
Well, just a government podcast in general is a sort of a weird concept. It's like a government podcast. It's like, that's a little bit of a strange thing to do. It's like, I guess that's like, it seems like normal messaging could work just fine.
Yeah, but it's really about reaching out to those youngins and telling them all about eating those damn tallow fries, because if you don't eat those tallow fries, you're going to be all left up, you know, those seed oils, they be nasty stuff. But anyways,
where do they even sell tallow fries?
I don't even know. Like, there was also, by the way, folks, I like how that's the only thing that was basically done, is like some people are cooking fries with tallow, so America's saved. It's like they're still horking down fried potatoes. It's like, that's just not healthy no matter how you put that, you know?
Man, I'll tell you what, at least they're cooked in that tallow. What the hell even is tallow? Let me pull that up.
Tallow is rendered fat from like an animal, basically.
Tallow is rendered fat from meat or mutton.
Man, I said it exactly. You still really don't.
It's a solid white, pale yellow. Oh my God, this is disgusting. It's clarifying that is nasty. I would rather have butter.
What the hell are you talking about, man? Tallow's pretty decent. Have you ever tasted the flavor of anything cooked in tallow?
I don't like the look of it.
Dude, it looks just like a damn Crisco spread. What are you talking about?
I don't know, like that. There's just something about that. It's like not really appetizing.
Yeah, you're not supposed to eat it whole. You like bait, you like melt it onto something. It's fat.
I just don't like it. I don't like it. I would rather have butter.
Okay, everybody, as my first order as the health secretary, we're taking this blood, we're having them taken out back and arrested. But anyways, so that we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Testosterone Mixes, who said, every time I've worked with Americans in the military or civvy street, they've always been a great bunch. I love the humor and export Americana attitude, and good work as always, gents.
And thank you so much for the support, and I thank you for enjoying the show. And I like to think that Americans are really nice folks. All of them, as a matter of fact. I appreciate every type of American. I appreciate the blue-haired ones from the cities and the ones who have dirt under their nails out in the country. I appreciate them all because each one of them has a little twinkle in their eye and has a vision and a dream and hopes and aspirations, and they're pretty funny, and they're pretty much all of them are very relatable. I just don't know what's up with people these days having to hate their own neighbors in this country, because truly, I'm not kidding, folks. I actually appreciate them all. I've been friends with many people from the right and the left over the years, and friends with a lot of them still. And all of them are great people to hang out around. I mean, I can't really complain about any of them. Might not disagree. I disagree with basically all of them on their domestic political opinions for one reason or another. But outside of that, I do greatly appreciate them for the folks they are and the kind of character that they bring into life. And so a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to talk about the greatness of the American spirit and the indomitable American will. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from John Creel. He said, the U.S. can find a heartbeat, but can't find minds.
I mean, honestly, now that you say it that way, it kind of does really bring up some questions there. But a big thanks to your support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
I thought it was the Iranians that couldn't find them. The U.S. can find the mines, but they can't really hang out in the strait too long to really find them, as the Iranians might fire some munitions at them.
And that's the problem. Therein the problem lies. Brianna. But a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Mark Dixon, and thank you very much, Mark, for that $5 support. I don't see any comment, but we do appreciate that. We also have a 5 from Blake's, who said, I sent the Morse code segments to my mom because that was her job in the Army, and she asked if you guys do it with an app or one of you does it manually.
I do it with an app. I have a Morse code translator that I use, and then I import that audio file into the intro. I actually don't know how to read or write Morse, so I have to use a translator to do it. And that's also what still blows me away with the Morse code decoders or the Morse code readers that we have, is that they are able to listen to it and basically read it. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for support, and that's actually really cool to hear that you send it on to your mom. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Tell me if you get this reference right here. I saw Daniel Dixon say in the live chat, he said, let 1,000 blossoms bloom for all I care. But there's still 20 blokes in the outback of Hormuz getting blasted by a mine. We're not going to rest until we save them.
Hold up, man. I got this. I don't really care about their sexual proclivities. Let 1,000 blossoms bloom. But I'm going to spend another minute on it because there's a man being eaten by a gator in the outback. It's like, man, it's like, excuse me, sir, are you of Lebanese descent? Oh, don't say that. I punch blokes in the mouth for saying stuff like that.
Oh, man, I saw the guy leaning into that, too. It looks like he's getting around social media, like capitalizing on that little thing right there. I still don't understand why the guy got so mad about that. It's like just being asked about Lebanese heritage. It's like, well, I mean, it's like if you have Lebanese heritage, like what's wrong with that if you had it? It's like, what's wrong with that?
Man, I don't know either. Like that triggered that guy to where he was going violent. Basically, really, the Doom Man music started playing. And also, I saw some people in the chat saying, well, other people rather than Americans are great in the world. Yeah, they are. It's just that I'm from the United States. I'm an American citizen. So whenever I talk about, a country and I'm going to like really hype one up, it's going to be my own. But that's not the disrespect anyone else. The Australians are really cool people. I know some Australians. They're really nice people. And I also know some British people, which are really nice people, and Germans that are very nice people. It's just that I'm not a German or a Briton or an Australian to really be able to talk about them innately. But I am an American, and that's what lets me talk about my people to a high regard because I know them well. But anyways, with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Chickadee, who said the King's speech. Check the news sources. DDG 112 and 121 did transit in and out, according to CENTCOM, and also some other sources.
And I would say, have to see. But a big thanks to you for support. And I also got to say, I have a stammer. I'm your king. But a big thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Ulf Hednar, who said, instead of cow dookie, the new word I use is taco dookie. That just sounds nasty.
That just sounds gross. Ew. But a big thanks to your support and help with this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Solid, who said, what's the under and over on the ceasefire being used as a stall tactic to move assets to the area?
Well,
yay tall, yay low.
Well, the under and over is about 10 feet tall and 2 feet under. That's what we're guessing right now. But a big thanks to you for support and help with this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Frank Trujillo. He said, do you have any knowledge? Maybe. He said, on the ghost murmur technology? And thank you.
Now, actually, generally on the knowledge level, not really a lot. But on the ghost murmur technology, I do have a lot of information. It's this thing called a Ouija board. I'm just kidding, by the way. But sadly, I'd have to declare ignorance on it. I actually don't know a lot about that technology. But I do thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Wantan Quadruple 8. He said, we should just start tolling all ships' arcade tokens. We will resupply from the gift store after we trade in our ticket, LSA.
That's a good idea, Wonton. I like that one. That's a smart one. You get a cookie. But a big thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Driven, who puts in a 5 and said, please continue to read the for filth, the idiots for filth. I'm not even sure what that means.
Please continue to read these idiots for filth. Checkmark. And a big thanks to your support. And I suppose we shall read these idiots for filth. I don't know what that means. But a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Wantan once again. He said, it's ironic that the U.S. is begging Europe while Ukraine's like, tag me in, boss. We want to help. And not a peep. Not a single mention or a thank you. LSA.
It is weird. We've noticed that a lot, and it is very weird. And a huge thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 5 from Ross McLean, and he said, it's 6 a.m. in Ireland right now. I'm up with my baby and listening to the news from you guys. It sets me up for the day in LSA.
And LSA. And really cool to hear that we have viewers over there in Ireland. I wonder what part of Ireland you're from. But a huge thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep running. And I hope that you have an amazing day over there today. And so a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Daniel Kerber. He said, rendered fat is like grabbing beef fat. Trust me, you want tallow. It clarifies when it's heated up.
And I think for the support, and generally, tallow is healthier than other forms of cooking grease and oils that are used. But the thing to me, though, like with that, and here's like my ultimate argument about it, is that at the end of the day, it is still French fries. So how healthy can healthy get with fried potatoes? Like, fried anything isn't really that healthy for, like, cholesterol reasons and whatnot. So it really doesn't matter what you're cooking it in, because you're only getting a marginal improvement in health on an unhealthy food item. And, you know, and that's why I don't really, like, just to be honest, I don't really get the huge push there. But it's just like, you know, if you wanted to give, like, say, like, you know, baked potato crisps, that would be very different. You know, like that is a lot healthier than French fries, but it's still a French fry. You know, it's like saying, here is a cholesterol killer burger, but instead of cooking it in, you know, cancer grease, we cooked it in, you know, heart attack grease. It's like, well, what really is the difference? You know, it's like, you're still eating something wildly unhealthy there. It's like, maybe we should try and get the American citizen into a realm where healthier food is just more accessible for them and more affordable, instead of just trying to make the slop they're eating like slightly less poisonous, but it is still not good for them. You know, like that's generally like my whole argument with that. It's like the whole approach just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But a big thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have another 5 from Wantan Quadruple 8, and they said tallow is way healthier for cooking and tasty too. I don't know what it has to do with stopping the measles, but what do I know? I don't have a doctor's degree.
And I thank you for the support. And that's true, but like I was saying just a second ago, it's like, I just don't get it. You know, it's like, shouldn't we be trying to get people to eat something healthier? You know, like, you know, like think about it, folks. Like a good, like a steak, with some vegetables or something like that, or if that's
Not
too
healthy.
expensive.
That's red meat.
Red meat's healthy for you.
They say it's not.
Actually, nowadays they're going back towards a dietary model that's more of one of the late Victorian era, where instead of having a food pyramid where the base of it's mostly grains, because there was a lot of fibbing with that was going on, they say have a little bit of everything. So trying to have an equal portion of every type of food item, because that generally might be more healthier. And I would say it probably is. And also on top of that, folks, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, folks, to say that stuff like, hell, fries are not going to be that healthy for you, or ultra processed foods are not going to be that healthy for you. So it's like, why don't we try and get people more vegetables into their diet with some meat and some good bread, and generally just have a nice broad variety for the American palate. That would clearly be a healthy approach. And I don't really know why we're just trying to make, a clearly unhealthy food item just slightly healthier. I just don't really get the logic in that. I feel like we ought to just drop the fries and just try and go to a food item that's just healthy on its own. But anyways, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
I don't really buy all that junk. Like I see someone saying steak is very healthy. I'm like, when people didn't have like a whole bunch of processed foods, like what were people eating? They were eating meats, they were eating vegetables and stuff like that. It's like, everything can't be extremely healthy. It's like you can get as healthy as possible. It's like, at the end of the day, it's like, humans have a limited lifespan. It would be nice to have, healthy eats. So that way your lifespan will be generally, satisfactory where you're not suffering from health issues. But it's like, we're not trying to like live forever. It's like, you're not going to live forever. So you can try to eat as healthy as possible, but obviously don't be highly unhealthy, but there's only so healthy you can get. But our next one here goes to WAP.
I just say, like, as far as that goes, regardless of the health side, like, because everyone can kind of get into the weeds on, like, is red meat better for you or not? I feel like the food just ought to be of quality, and it ought to be affordable. So instead of everyone having to eat, like, ultra-processed stuff that basically is more chemicals than it is real food, that's basically just straight from the field, from wherever it is, to the plate, it ought to be a lot closer from being from the field to the plate. So that way people can just have a higher quality food like they have in Europe. Like Europe is great at maintaining incredibly stringent food standards and also generally making the food about as affordable as it is here in America. And if they can do it, we can do it. And it would be far healthier for the American citizen. And we can see that it does reflect in the European diet because they have slightly longer lifespans on average in Europe than they do here in the States. And I would say that's probably mostly down to diet, in my opinion. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Wapalong Cassidy, who said winning.
And, well, I mean, a big thanks to you for supporting. With that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Tabitha Silvers, who said, thanks, Enforcers, and thank you for the kind support as well. We also have a 2 from Plazoth, and thank you, Plazoth, as well for that $2 support, and we also appreciate that very much. We also have a 2 from Elka PME, who said, they said some things about Uganda, it looks like right here. I'm not sure, but Enforcer, what say you?
I just got to say, I just don't understand this Uganda military chief, dude. It's like, why in the world does Turkey owe them $1 billion and a woman? Why isn't it why isn't it Brazil? They could have picked anyone.
Woman?
Yeah, remember, like, the Uganda military chief, I covered this earlier in the news, like, the Uganda military chief is demanding $1 billion from Turkey and their finest woman, otherwise he's shutting down their embassy.
I thought you said $1 billion woman. I was about to say that's getting expensive around here.
I mean, you can probably find one, but it's like, why in the world?
I'm sure you can.
Why in the world do they pick Turkey though? Because like nothing like I have to say nothing against Turkish women, but it's like that's just very random, like just to single them out. It's like, why didn't they pick someone else, like the United States or Brazil or something? They picked Turkey. I was like, it's just wildly confusing to me. I don't really understand what goes on in Ugandan leaders' minds, because they have like the craziest people who run Uganda like every other generation. It was Idi Amin in like the 80s, and now it's this guy. And it's like, why can't they just have someone normal that runs the country down there? It's always like, it's like someone who's like mentally deranged that's running Uganda. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
Also have a 2 from Headstanding Penguin, who said sour crude equal something. I'm not sure if this is something positive to read or not, but I'm going to have to leave that one alone because it sounds like it could be something possibly nasty toward a certain group of folks. But thank you very much for the support. We also have a 2 from David Ford who said, "You're just a couple of something. They made some political statement here. I don't know about nothing like that." But we also have a 2 from Matt Ramon. He said, "Do you believe that we have the upper hand, USA?"
Well, I mean, we don't clear out the Strait of Hormuz. We don't. Actually, the Iranians do. That's why we need to clear it out and open it so that way we can say that we do have hand. Honestly, folks, if anyone's about to come in here, someone's about to come in here and do this, they're about to say, "Oh, you clearly love Iran." Then it's like, no, I don't live in delusional land. Like, if they're screwing us over and we're not fixing the situation to where they're not, I'm going to say that. That's why I keep saying it, is because there ought to be enough people in this country saying that things have to change so that we fix the actual problem that is going to screw us over, so that I can say we're on the upper hand and we're winning. Because right now, with them doing what they're doing, we might end up losing in a lot of ways. But a huge thanks to you for the support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, it is time for us to get on into the Morse code decoders and the live chat. So Matthew, what do we got?
Get this. This just came out a little while ago. Now there's reports coming out saying that China might have already given Iran manpad air defense systems, and they're simply planning to send more of them. They're planning to load them up with some extra. So I think I actually mentioned that the other night when we brought this up the other night. I think I said it's possible that China already sent some, and we're just now hearing the rumors they might be sending some, but they've already gotten there. I actually said that the other night. So it seems to be that could be the case possibly. It sounds like China might have actually already sent some stuff along with Russia. It almost seems like they're using Iran as a proxy to try to wipe out the United States. It seems like they're trying to do the little Ukraine tactic on us this time. It sure seems like it a little bit. Might not be good to buddy up with Russia and China, maybe. But anyways, though, jumping into our Morse code decoders tonight, we have Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Her Royal Fluffiness, Coach Copateric, Sire, and Brian. And they said the Morse said, excuse me, the talks have been going on for hours and hours, and will they end? And LTLSA.
And that's the sound of money. I got that 10 on the nail. That is correct. That is the Morse code message of the night. And you know what's crazy is I wrote that Morse code message up before we heard that the talks had ended. So it actually ended. It was 21 hours. That's how long it took. Hey, Matthew, were you laughing at me coughing right there? Were you laughing at that?
I didn't even hear you coughing.
Oh, you were laughing at something right there.
I was laughing at me just stuttering like a dumb son of a bitch with that thing right there.
Bro, I'm not gonna lie, man. That whole thing was like a rolling like cart on fire. Because you were like, long live the least man. And then right after that, I go, I was like, this couldn't get any worse. I was like, bro, we're just fumbling this whole thing.
The quality of the show just went downhill. The ratings are falling off the planet. Now he has a reason to tweet about it.
Now he's gonna
choking.
Bro, that's what he's gonna say. He's gonna like, those stupid enforcers, that damn choke artist enforcer and his stuttering idiot brother enforcer Matt, they're both big fools. Like, it's gonna be like, hey, screw you, man. It's like we had a moment. Oh my, dude, I'm not gonna lie, man. I have a feeling, folks, don't you have a feeling like this, Matthew? With how many people he's put up on the chopping block recently, we eventually are going to be in one batch at some point.
If he's watching the stream, I said, sir, watch the stream. Make sure you hit the subscribe and the like button. You got to make sure you get notifications. You got to keep a tab on these people. You got to look at them. You got to look at these people. I'm telling you. They said they got a face for radio, sir. That's what they told me. A face for radio. I don't even know what that means. I guess they're ugly bastards. There's a lot of subject matter there. That's what they're telling me. I haven't seen them personally, but might have to look at pictures. Might have to see some pictures. They said there's pictures floating around out there somewhere, sir. There's pictures. Oh, they got those pictures out there, sir.
Oh, man. So the SNL will get hit before you guys. They really are hard to hit because if you try to attack SNL, they'll just make a skit on you attacking them. So they're pretty like attack proof for the large part. But eventually it's going to come around to getting us. And it's kind of funny though, folks, because like honest truth is that nobody's impervious to it, because if you kiss the guy's ass, he'll still go after you eventually. Like you'll fall off favor with them, you'll act like you were like a devil. And then if you are indifferent to him, he'll attack you, and then if you don't like him, he'll attack you. So basically, you get attacked no matter what. Like, it doesn't matter what approach you take. Because I mean, look at all the podcasters like Matthew was talking about earlier that he pointed out in that one Truth Social post that literally all supported him, and then he basically just tried to tear them all down. It's like, it doesn't honestly, the worst thing is, I would say, folks, in my opinion, the worst thing is acting like you even like the guy, because he's going to really make sure to steamroll you at some point eventually if he thinks you're getting too big for your britches or a little bit more popular compared to him. Then he'll just steamroll you and try and destroy your reputation even after you back the guy up for years.
Oh.
He was picking up that weight.
Some people need tearing down. Some people need tearing down. It's like an ugly wallpaper. Tear it down. Take it off the wall. It's ugly. It's defacing the wall. The sheetrock is hurting because of that wallpaper, sir. Get it down. It's like your grandmother's old wallpaper. You got to just rip it off the wall. That's what you got to do with podcasters. Sometimes they get out there and they get on that pod and they start casting a little bit too much. They start getting a little too mouthy. That's what they say, sir. Mouthy, mouth service, that's what they call it. They call it mouth service. And if they're not doing it right, you gotta tear them down. That's what they do. They tear them down like wallpaper.
They got those lips that won't stop. Oh, yo, no diddy. No diddy. That's a real quote. Drops the thing, gives up and walks off. Oh, man. I tell you. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I get no respect around here. We try to cover news. The president shit on us. Man, it's going to come around eventually. I can tell you, folks. It's going to be a time coming. Because he can only go after people, once. So now he's going after all the big people who are, the podcasters. Now he's going to have to start, working down the list, and we'll probably be, the 1,000th one down or something. But
it's not going to work. It's not going to work. I see what you're doing. I'm seeing it. I play 4D chess, and I see what you're doing. You're trying to use reverse psychology. You're trying to make me not call you out by saying that I'm going to call you out. And if I call you out, you're going to prove me wrong. I see what you're doing. You're not smart. That's a second-rate joke. That's a joker right there. They call him a jerk. That's what they call him, a jerk.
Oh.
That's what they call him. Look, they're turning the cameras off. They're turning them off. They don't want to see this jerk. Look, they don't want to see him. He's so ugly, they're turning off the cameras.
Meanwhile, the average press conference. Mr. President, you said yesterday that the sky was blue. Today you're saying the sky is red. Have you changed your mind? Boy, what a really stupid person you are. And I thought you had some credibility. What an idiot. Okay, it's all right, well, that is what it is. But anyways, enough of that, folks. Enough of that, jeez. Someone's about to come in here and really think they're going to own us, and they're going to put another TDS in the chat, and boy, they're really going to get us with that one. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into the live chat questions. Sadly, folks, we'll only be able to get 3 because we are running low on time. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one's going to go to David Ford, who put in 2. He said, send some Monopoly money and a female turkey creature.
Yeah, that might appease the guy. He might be happy with that. I don't know. I think things here are supporting. With that, we're on to the third to last question of the night.
It's time to get on to the third to last. If you're not first, you don't matter. That's what they say. If it's the third or second, it's irrelevant. These questions don't matter, these third and second. Whoever's the first is going to be the one that counts. That's all that matters is winning. They're winning so much. The question, people are getting tired of winning. They said, sir, don't read off my question, sir. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. But anyway, so jumping into our three last ones. This one goes to Fox. He said, what's this administration's negotiation batting average?
It's one of the greatest as far as failure rate. It's like a 1 in 10, out of every 10 negotiations, one of them produces something meaningful. The rest of them are literally just done to bump lips and gums, and it's a great, wonderful thing that we do. It's a great service. We always try and get these aspiring people. Usually they have a lot of lip filler, and we give them a ability to try and orate with brand new lip filler. It's a wonderful thing, great thing. We send them off to places like India and Cambodia. We try and make the negotiations, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But you know what they say? It comes and goes with the territory. The out of the deal is that you very rarely ever make a deal, and that's the beauty of it, is that way when you get a deal, it seems like a big deal, when in reality you shouldn't have even been involved, because there's really no negotiating ability that we have if we're not even involved in any real way. But whatever. Anyways, I hope that does address that incredibly well. The greatest that I can. People called me up after I answered that question, folks, to be entirely honest with you. They called me up. I just answered it. But they still called me up and they said, sir, you just answer that question so well. How do you answer the questions so incredibly well? And I tell them, it's because I'm the smartest guy in the world. Nobody knows how to answer questions like I do. I answer them bigly. I answer them hugely. And it's always great. People are always amazed with the answers I give because they're the smartest answers ever. I know more about answering questions than anyone else. But anyways, a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the second to last question of the night.
You know, it's a strange thing. It's a strange thing the way they do it. They say, sir, what's the tactic, sir? They say, when you're dealing with the press, this sick press, they said, this press, they call them the press because they press you too much. They're always pressing people. They're always touching people and pressing people. That's what they call them the press. They said, it's a little thing called DARVO. They say, it's called DARVO, sir. It's called deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. That's what they call it, sir. It's called deny everything, attack everybody. That's what it is. You can't go wrong with a little DARVO. But next one goes to AF Kaplan, who said, if China does actively help Iran with its war efforts, what could the U.S. realistically do about it?
Sadly, not a whole lot. Because if they try and get a ship in, the problem is that if we try and stop that ship and seize it, that's actually an act of war, technically, even if it is a commercial merchant vessel that is flagged by China. So, unless we were willing to try and create a larger war with China, there's really not a lot that we can do, sadly. So, I hope that does address it the best I can, at least in my opinion. But unfortunately, if the Chinese want to get involved like that, and they really want to try and call a bluff, or at least a forced confrontation, we either have to decide to go to war with them or just let it through. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be Mary Jacobs, who said, any truth about the 2 Iranian pilots that were shot down and injured, but are in U.S. custody and receiving medical care?
I haven't heard anything about that. I have to declare ignorance on that one. Matthew, have you heard anything about that on your end? Because I haven't.
Uh-uh.
Right? It's like, okay. Okay, man, okay.
Raggy, the street's closed.
Like, Zoink Scoop. Is that true? Raggy.
Raggy, petroleum gun.
Oh, man, I tell you, we could do voices all night, I tell you. It's fun, folks. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to round this thing on out for the night. I hope that does address that question well. I haven't heard about that myself. And with that, it's time for us to round this thing on out for the night. I got to thank you all so much once again for watching. It's always an honor and truly a pleasure to be able to cover this news for each and every one of y'all every single night, along with Enforcer Matt here. Everyone give a round to Enforcer Matt here. He's an amazing co-host and helps out massively with getting us the breaking news on the show and everything else. It's an incredible thing to be able to run the show alongside my dear brother Enforcer Matt and have all of y'all here to be able to listen to all the news. Oh damn! Oh, that scared the shit out of me right there. I thought someone was popping shots outside. I was like, man, I was about to whip out the gat. I was like, hey, yo, hold up! I was like, it's happening. But beyond that,
up in the blicky, that's what they call it. Up in the blicky. They said, don't try to come get me, please. That's not. Get away.
They sat there and said, whip the block and spin the Glock. But beyond that, I gotta say, a huge thanks to all of you all so much once again for watching. We had a peak viewership tonight of 35,000 people, and we also had a total viewership of 325,000 people. Quite a lot of people have been here tonight, and we thank you all so much once again, and we thank everyone who's subscribed so far tonight as well, because we've actually been able to jump right up to 594,000 subscribers tonight, and we are incredibly appreciative of so many people enjoying the channel. With that in mind, folks, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. If there is a shorter video to be made, I'll be the one making it, and if there isn't, y'all can still see us at night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world, and to also run our Sunday night fundraiser. And so with that, we will see you all then. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava. Actually, you wouldn't hear him say that. Long live the Leaf Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we'll see you all tomorrow at our usual time at 10 p.m. Eastern to cover the rest of the news happening throughout the day tomorrow. And also, if there is a short war video to cover, the Enforcer will be putting that out midday tomorrow to bring you all that news when it does happen. And I suspect with the war restarting, we'll probably have news. But in the meantime, though, thank you all for joining us. And we had over 325,000 people here by the end of the stream tonight, which is a massive amount of people. And we appreciate you all for choosing us as your news source. But in the meantime, though, we'll see you all tomorrow. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava. Get some rest, and good night.